Beta, right? YouTube, Twitch. All right. So, okay. Right. Humble is saying it's out. Yeah. See, it's still out. Let's flip YouTube. Yeah, that's not what it is. Strange. Yeah, come on. Edit. Star Citizen, yeah. We're gonna go with we're gonna go huh? That's all right. So we're gonna do a big recap day. I don't know how far we'll get, but we'll see. Edit video. There we go. Okay. So hopefully everyone can hear me at least partially well. Where do we start? Well, where was my last? RSI. Let's see. Everything seems to be logging me out today, which is frustrating. Monthly report. Let's see. We're gonna also watch that Beijing, I think, is where it was. The Beijing Citizen Con, or yeah, thingamabob. What's going on here? I know I'm a little late to the party. Versus April 14th. Roadmap roundup was April 9th. I don't know if I covered that. I'm just having to do a massive backlog. Um, there we go. Okay. Cool. Hopefully everyone in chat can hear me halfway decently. So, the roadmap roundup for April 9th. See, I've been away for over a month, chat. They added space patrol missions for 4.1. Has anyone tried those? Which take a patrol mission that takes the player through a series of checkpoints. At each waypoint, the player can run into a variety of objectives and encounters. All this stuff was tentative when this was announced. Space combat mission Ambush that tasks players with ambushing incoming high-value target ships as they pass by. Space combat UEE training missions. You know, it's pretty much de facto what it is. Redacted space combat mission and Juvenile Valakar been set to release. The Atlas Geo release. Drake Golem release. Arena Commander Esther's Clearing released. Crossroads of Crime release. Aligning Mine released. Gosh, I can't spell his name. Willico's Emporium release. Mission Giver Willico. The Antium Armor, the Hathor Mining Station, the Volt AR Parallax, and the Hathor Ground Alignment stuff. So, this was a modest update whenever this was posted. When was this? April 9th, yeah. After that, This Week in Star Citizen. There was an ISC, Spring Promotion launch, and Free Fly. Then after that, we had Digital Hairdresser. This is just one of the most absurd things.
This was unintended. That's the first thing I must say. My career took a curve. I was a lead character artist at another company. One of the things that scared me the most at that time was hair, because it is one of the hardest tasks. And I just tackled it so well, I guess, that I started to get praise for it. Praise in a way that I never got as a character artist. And that's how it went. I never planned to be a digital hairdresser of any sort. I've been in love with Star Citizen since ever. It's been actually my dream for all along. When I started learning character art, this is what I wanted to work. When I started here, one of the things people were making fun of me, former colleagues were like, oh great, Andre, you just signed a contract to make hair for a game. Everyone wears a helmet. And that made me think, rest assured, nowadays, I'm proud to log into Star Citizen and just see that a lot of people is now wearing their hairs and not the helmets. When I got here, the first thing was to try not to scrap everything that was made. Obviously, there was a lot of things that were properly made that just wouldn't fit for every purpose that we wanted. The first hair
I love how they go over
the first result
and
was
how
kinda
it's
disappointing.
how
I was still learning
intricate
the tools,
things.
learning the process, learning the new engine that we use. But after
Back when I was
2
younger,
weeks, I managed to.
When I was younger, we didn't have half the stuff they do for this. I'm 39. I can remember a time when it took days to do any render work.
Create one hair. We finally took it to a meeting. My first time in front of CR. I actually made sure I read everything that CR has written about hair that was on our register, so I knew what he wanted. I think that was kind of smart because it had an impact on him immediately. The next morning after that meeting, I wake up with a message on our creative chat saying something, how happy he was that we had finally someone that was tackling hair in the way that he wanted. I'm like, all right, okay, we're on the right path, I thought. During this process, Ian actually told me, okay, Andre, what do you need to make this work for both Squadron 42 and Star Citizen? And I'm like, he wanted to have 70 hairs from February till December so that we can do the first chapters of Squadron 42. Doing my maths really fast, if I was to do it myself, it would take like 2 years. Even if I take like 3 to 5 days per hair, normally a hair before I arrived was taking 20 to 40 days. The only solution was to hire more hands, to hire more people, and I needed people that would hit the ground running. It had to be people that I knew that could do the work, and in that sense I presented the proposal to Ian and to CR. They agreed to everything, and that's how we did it. We basically put the guys in. Instead of 70 hairs, by December we had 130 hairs. Because we did not only do the Squadron ones, we actually revamped the character customizer. We added beards, which weren't even in the plan back then. It was a bet, a risky bet, but I took the process under my wing. I grabbed the guys, and it worked. So, and for that, I got some praise and got some recognition in the company, which comes with the risk that I've taken, of course. So where do we start with the hair? There must be an idea first, an intention, of course. Star Citizen is a bit different from Squadron. In Squadron, we're trying to do digital clones. Obviously, in that case, we're going to take as much pictures, as much references of the real person and try to mimic that into the video game.
Some of the hair they're coming out with looks pretty good.
We sometimes require a concept, sometimes we have a more broader idea that we want to go.
Some Imperial, that's
we are production artists,
military.
we are not concept artists, so that's not what we do. What we really need to work is that the idea comes solid at us and it's very clear what's intended. Whatever references we can use, we make a mood board, and from there we start our own development. It's important to understand that the system that I implemented here, it kind of removes from the artist the ability to mess it up, in the sense that I control the textures and the shaders, so that means the beginning of the process and the ending of the process. I've tested them and I make sure they work, and so I give to the artist the pleasurable part of just doing the asset itself, and therefore there's no fruit salad. What we want is basically a quality that is standard, that stays the same throughout the game, and if I gave them the ability to create their own textures, we would have hairs, some would be very thick, some would be very thin, some would be different, and they would render different. So I removed these two parts of the process out of the equation by sorting it myself, giving them only the pleasurable part. I don't have any other word for it. Sounds kinky, doesn't it?
He's not wrong.
Enjoyable, I guess. Making hair for games, there's a lot of limitations to it. Our game being fast-paced and all, MMO. The way to keep it performant and the way to keep it working is by trying to establish limits of how far you can go. When I started, I remember the lead tech artist telling me, Andre, there's no limit to what you can do, just go. You know, there's no budget of try count, there's no budget. And I'm like, how can that be? I mean, I've been doing games for a while, and there is limitations, okay? He was just letting me be free enough to create and letting me establish the limit so that they can then adapt. I was very conservative. We all have performant hairs. Some in Squadron
Wait.
42 are a bit
Oh,
heavier because
shoot.
we just need to hit that quality bar, but mostly are all very performant. What you do is you just use what you need and you don't use what you don't need, basically.
Can't believe I did that.
2025
Sorry, chat.
comes with creatures and more hairs for the character customizer. That's the main thing. There's also armor.
Oh, that's some cool art.
Hair, not hair, human hair, but you know, types of fur or types of synthetic hair. So we created a lot of hairs which are recognizable. We were trying to break barriers. The character customizer is like this nowadays because we were trying to push the shader and see where we could go. Tools programmers and shader programmers were coming to me and say, hey Andre, I didn't know our shader could do this type of things. And as I got this type of feedback, I was, okay, let's push this and see how far we can go. And so we have a bit of a range which is a bit too wide for now in terms of hairs that we're using. One of the last meetings with CR regarding this aspect, he told me, Andre, what we need now is Jared's hair, is Andre's hair. Move away from the outrageous, move away from the military hairstyles. That's the direction for now, to get established a good solid base of hairs. And on the creatures, we're going a bit wilder now. We're starting to push the limits as to fully covered with fur creatures and stuff like that. Before we started with small patches of fur here and there on the creatures, and now we're just making all things together. Well, I'm eager to do hairstyles that will be longer than the limitation that we currently have. Our current limitation is the shoulders, simply because of the way the armors work and the helmets work, and we don't want it to be clipping all along. So I'm really looking at the day that we can make hairs that are longer.
The guy looked like a Far Cry
do
enemy.
like a big dreadlock that goes straight
Far
down.
Cry, can't remember which one.
Yeah, so I'm really, really proud of my team. Everything that I said here is basically a teamwork. My team does not involve only the people under me, it also involves the people above that feed me with stuff and that help me get better. The hair story here has been a success, and has been a success because we're working together. That's the only reason. I wouldn't be here talking or doing anything. I wouldn't have been at CitizenCon stage without any of them. So that's very clear to me. We are now through a moment that we can create any hairstyle that we want. And I'm very proud of that.
And with more than 30 new hairstyles scheduled to make their way into the Persistent Universe across each remaining patch this year, the options for self-expression in Star Citizen are just one more way 2025 will continue to deliver more content than ever before. Now, I also want to tell you about this new Squadron 42 Spotlight that's being delivered directly to inboxes right now about every 2 months or so. It comes with timed exclusives, never before seen visuals, audio files, story information, all that kind of stuff included. So don't forget to check your inboxes for that, and then of course opt in through the account settings on the website if you really want that content before everyone else. And then of course for those of you with friends, nobody here, with friends thinking about trying out Star Citizen, our very first free fly of the year starts today with 6 vehicles to choose from. The universe truly is better with friends, or so I'm told. For Inside
So
Star
you're
Citizen,
told.
I'm Jared Huckabee. As always, thanks for letting us share the people and process of game development with you, and we'll see you all here next week. It's WrestleMania weekend.
Well, okay. Okay. Strange. Yeah. Hold on, I was reading. Where did I read there was a comment? Oh. No. Super weird. Well, that's kind of odd. Hmm. Okay, never mind. The story so far. Okay, so that wraps up this hairdresser thing. We're already through here, here, and here. Spring celebration, April 27th, which is this week in ISC. So we had roadmap roundup, update, all this stuff, Star Citizen Live on this one. And a story so far, which I don't believe I've ever seen. Okay. So this is now 2 weeks later. This is roadmap roundup for 423 and notable changes April 23rd. The patrol, ambush, and UEE missions were set to committed. The new hairstyles release, new hairstyles 4.11, has been set to tentative, and that was all they had for the progress tracker that day. Hello, whoever just sailed into chat. I am doing a recap of stuff. I've been away from the Star Citizen community for a while. Sorry. But trying to do a recap to get caught up. I am so far behind. It's not even funny. I mean, it is funny, but it's sad. You know? It is so sad how far behind I am. So, with that being said, the roadmap roundup there, we're going to go to SCL, which is the story so far.
Hi, everybody. If you were watching on Twitch, I apologize. Welcome to another episode.
07 Brian,
Host Jared Huckabee.
my first
And if you've
person
never
to
seen
talk
Star
in
Citizen Live
weeks.
before, it's where we take an indeterminate amount of
How are
time at the end
you,
of a certain
my
weeks
friend?
to invite our developers on and answer questions from you, the Star Citizen community.
How are
On
you?
this
How are
week's
you?
show,
Hopefully
we're gonna
well.
take- I'm guessing, looking at the question, it's probably going to be about 30 or 40 minute show. We'll see in case you have somewhere to be. We have members of our esteemed narrative team, people who need no introduction, but I'm going to anyway. Dave and Will. Dave, how you doing?
I'm good. Good. How are you?
Good. Will?
That's my intro.
Look, look, they're not all going to be winners, and most of them won't be. Dave, Will, because somebody should.
I'm basically doing a big recap, Brian.
Yep. Sure. Give me a second to park.
Having to. I'm so far behind.
Mustache.
It's almost laughably sad.
Tell everybody who you are and what you do for Star Citizen.
My name is Dave Haddock. I'm the narrative director here at CIG and work on Star Citizen, Squadron 42. Basically, work with the team to flesh out, build out the universe, write the dialogue, come up with characters, come up with storylines, fiction, lore, item descriptions, all sorts of fun stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm William Weisbaum, Assistant Narrative Director. I do what Dave does, but just
Backwards
a
and
little
in
smaller.
heels.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I love those.
I jumped in there. So this week's show, we put up a thread on Spectrum as we normally do and collected questions. Before we get into the questions, I want to start. I want to do a lightning round of some of the questions. A lot of the questions that come in tended to be more feature related. Tended to be, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why don't you do this? There are a lot of
The
questions
why
that all
questions
have
do get kind of
very
annoying.
the same answer and whatnot. So, so as we'll obviously be taking some questions from the chat here as well. So as to help guide those chats, the chat questions, and to help explain to those who submitted questions in Spectrum are like, well, why didn't they answer my question? It was voted up more. I want to talk a little bit about the difference between those questions and why the answer to almost all of them is pretty much the same. So some questions from the thing. Are there plans for any cutscenes in Star Citizen? Yes,
Cinematic
we all love
cutscenes.
that kind of stuff. But those resources are currently tied up finishing Squadron 42, the cinematics team, the facial animation team, all that stuff like that. And so that priority has to be there because that game is one that absolutely requires that, and whereas Star Citizen, that's a nice to have kind of thing. Any plans to integrate the Galactopedia into Star Citizen, help players keep track of the ongoing narrative in the game? Yes, obviously something we'd all love very much, but that requires feature work and UI work.
Really?
Again, both
For
those
end of
teams are
year,
working on not
Brian?
just finishing out
End of
Squadron
year
42, but
stuff?
bug fixing and optimizing the performance of the PU right now. So
That's
This
fascinating.
year is a big push towards performance optimization and bug fixing. So we're really trying to hold back on introducing new features to the PU for at least a great portion of this year while we stabilize that. So again, something on the list, but is it more important than getting base building and crafting and our engineering finally in and stuff like that? So it'll be farther down the line, stuff like that. I thought Pyro Narrative had the planet strip mined. That's another thing where we had that story, that idea way back when the first version of Star Citizen, where planets would never be landable. You were never supposed to be able to land on planets. You would just kind of go to a unique landing zone and stuff. And now we have these fully realized 360-degree planets and stuff. So with that, paired with where Planet Tech is at any given time. We're still on Planet Tech V4. We're developing Planet Tech V5 right now. It means that these planets have to be realized in the tech that we have at the moment and stuff like that. So narrative.
Should we go?
Yeah. I'm doing the ones. I don't want you to. I'm setting a thing. I don't want you to have to tell people.
Okay.
I don't want you to have to tell people why these things can't happen right now.
Okay.
That's my job. That's and then just things like that. So basically, a lot of the questions that are why don't you do this now, or seem like some
The
really
why
obvious
questions
like,
get
wouldn't it
annoying.
be so much better
Trust
if you
me.
did this instead of this? The answer is almost always yes, and we agreed and we wanted to too. But the priorities of game development mean that other things take priority and other things have to come first and stuff like this. So.
Yeah, Diamond Sparking Zero really did.
Really loud there for some reason. I'm sorry. I haven't done one of these in a while. So with that, we're going to jump into actual questions. that
Daima
can be
was
affected by
kind of a
narrative and
return to
stuff like that.
form.
So there's a number of things going on. I'm going to start with probably our most recent one, just for recency bias. The regen crisis was introduced in 4.1. Why don't you tell us what the regen crisis is?
So high level, what was it, 3 years ago? We had introduced this concept of regen. So it was a fictional way to justify why players are respawning. Came up with this lore behind it of the Abraham spheres and imprinting and stuff like that, and actually did it sort of in the timeline of the fictional universe. So it happened while players were playing. We introduced the tech. We kind of showed how the Imperator and the other people were kind of reacting to this type of thing. But now, basically, for whatever reason, the efficiency of the technology has been failing. So, spoiler, it's not affecting the players, but for the majority of the NPC population, the efficacy of the regen tech has been dropping significantly. So basically, death is now becoming a thing again. They thought they'd kind of conquered it, and now it turns out that they're not.
By the way,
UEE and the Imperator. is
Heads
basically
up.
Trying to
Known issues going
scramble
into
to figure out a
live.
solution, to
1.11.
kind of research and science their way.
We
out
are
of this
expecting
predicament to
equipped
hopefully finally
items
restore the
and
Texans'
armor to
Shadow of Glory.
disappear off the player.
And I'm pretty anything
This
you wanna
issue
add?
is fixed
No,
in builds
during the
after,
run-up to it, the testing
but
stuff,
going into this
like,
build,
as much
it
as the
will
testings had counted
occur.
before it
So
came out,
remember,
once you
chat,
increase the sample
if
size
you
to
play
several
Star
billion,
Citizen
it started
today,
really quickly, like,
make
kinda
sure
starting
to take
track,
your
and all of a
stuff
sudden, all
off
these people who thought they had their imprint
before
safely stored away in a
you,
hospital, everyone went out and got their
shut
imprints
down for the
protected.
night before the
It
update.
wasn't until they put it to the test months later that they realized that the imprints had gone bad. And so it's kind of like, you know, these small incidences of like, oh, this whole shipload of people got into a wreck and none of them came back. And like, that's weird. And then it started piling up to the realization of, oh, this technology is not as dependable as we first thought.
And you kind of ran into the thing too, where people were starting to, you know, effectively get kind of cocky of like, oh, it doesn't matter, I can go and I can fly my ship into a wall and bounce back and everything will be okay. So not only is the samples pool increasing, but people could start abusing it and basically over and over and over again. And again, that could kind of raise the failure rate.
Yeah, so turns out a large percentage of the population doesn't take well to imprinting. Maybe they only have one imprint, maybe none. And it's not like the player population, just like the player population is the part of the universe who owns spaceships and goes on these great adventures, they're also the part of the population that takes really well to imprinting, so for the most part.
Smart
And
man.
this is a story
Very
that,
smart.
You know, obviously, we've just introduced it with 4.1. This is a story that will
Why am I
continue
not?
to be revealed and continue, and players will have more interactions with it and stuff as the months go by later this year.
Yeah. So, I mean, as we had sort of talked about in one of the Inside Star Citizens, the idea is like we're introducing these sort of ongoing storylines. And so this was sort of the inciting incident for what we're calling kind of our B story. So it's, you know, the threat of the regen crisis is kind of looming, and it's sort of moving pieces around the board, whether it's corporate interests, government interests, stuff like that, to kind of make decisions that the players will get to kind of see as they kind of go throughout the universe.
Ancient Sale says, all this lore and background story over 14 years had zero representation of this in the PU. When is this content going to represent this? That's literally what the whole line in mind for. That this is the reason you're going to these Hathor places and stuff, and the reason you're searching for these minerals and whatnot is to feed into Rayari.
Yeah, and there's going to be other ways that we're going to kind of start tying into this stuff a bit more, where players are going to be able to see the ramifications of it in the universe.
Yeah.
And hear NPCs discussing it and
Yes, you'll start to see more NPCs coming online. Again, the answer to, I bring up Ancient Sales question because the answer to that is essentially the same as the answer for the first three questions of the show. It's basically those development resources need to become available for us in order to manifest this stuff more fully into the verse. And we'll have some chat later on about how we're going to do that and stuff like this. It's one of those things where we shouldn't stop creating story.
No.
Just like anything else, we shouldn't stop adding mining to the game. We shouldn't stop adding salvaging or combat or whatever. And the tools that allow us to make those things better will continue to develop as each patch goes on. The tools that will allow us to tell our stories better will continue to evolve as the patch goes on. Which the next question on here says, why doesn't the regen crisis affect the player?
I mean, it's mostly just for the fact that the players do need to respawn. I mean, regen still factors into the original Death of a Spaceman thing, so there is still that idea.
Yeah.
You know, your imprint kind of integrity will decay over time.
What
and
this
so we
is
will sort of
telling
kind of
me
feed
is
back into
regen
that original
is going to be
mechanic,
hard to
that we
repair,
talked about all those years ago.
even if you have all the
Mostly it's just
parts.
the fact that it was, you know, players need to respawn otherwise.
You know, right now in the alpha state of our game and whatnot, there's we're being completely.
It'd be a bit too punishing.
For being candid, the game is plenty punishing enough in a lot of places without us introducing this on top of that. Plus, again, that's new feature work and stuff, and as we've said since February of this year, like this isn't the year of too many new feature works. This is the year of stability and performances like this. Is the regen crisis a precursor to Death of Spaceman? Is this, when this storyline wraps, will it have some effect on Death of a Spaceman when it
The Asgard's an interesting beast.
Spoil.
On the one hand, it looks like a more
Stay tuned.
capable
Keep going.
Valk,
Yeah. I tried.
but on the other,
How does
it looks
make
like it's
sense
more
narratively
its
that
own
this
ship.
major crisis we're
Yeah.
reading is largely ignored by the UEE, and they expect a bunch of randoms to solve it for them instead by knocking down all Hathor sites with the fleet. So
It's kind of cool
What
looking.
is the UEE doing?
I like
They're
the.
doing a lot. It's mostly
It
kind
reminds
of like
me of a
their-
jump jet or something. And
the effects of what they're doing are probably behind closed doors. They're happening in other systems.
I want to
and
say
stuff
during
that.
like
Yeah, but
World
We
War
are- we
II
are
or
limited in
something,
10 piracy
like one of
systems.
those
Yeah. So
planes
they're
that you
certainly up
drop
to
people
a
out
lot,
of.
You know, trying to incentivize corporations to.
No, it's
find a
during the
solution and
Cold War,
incentivize
not the World War.
population to help the corporations in scientific research and finding the resources and stuff like that. It's just, again, it's a player-centric experience. So obviously, we're focusing on.
I mean,
We'll
they're
just
putting a
have
lot
to
of
see how it
resources, UE putting a lot of
performs when we
resources
get
into
it.
trying to fix this crisis, but the player isn't necessarily going to a UE.
That's
research
my
lab to
feeling.
seeing what they're doing. We're coming up with ways that the player can participate in this regen crisis.
And you will be, without spoiling, you will be going to some research labs, in the future. They may not be UEE research lab, but you're gonna be seeing what other people, like we've heard what Rayari is doing. You're gonna start seeing what other factions and corporations are doing to attempt to address.
Yeah, and the reason why Rayari has all these funds to spend on these rare resources that players are excavating
There's
right
a
now is
dead
because
body
UE is putting
going
extra
through the
funding
background.
through Addison into researching how to fix this crisis.
And for the regen crisis, is the player
New
to focus
Guardian
on
has
helping
no
address it, or will
bedlog?
players
Really?
also have the chance to investigate
Interesting.
why it's happening in the first place?
So it's more of an attack craft than a
What you can tell us without spoiling it, obviously.
than its own ship thing, right?
It's more like they're experiencing a crisis firsthand, and how to phrase this. We're going on a journey, and we really wanted the players to feel like they're part of this unfolding. And so whether there's going to be concrete answers or solutions at the end of this, we're gonna leave it up because you're checking in with us halfway through.
Right.
So it's kind of a
I'm good
delicate-
with it how it behaves, just as long as it's got
Everybody-
teeth.
We barely got the first chapter.
You know,
so-
decent
Well, and
teeth.
Again, yeah, sort of
Brian.
the idea of like Will said, that
As long as it has decent
players
teeth, I don't
experience
really
as
care
it's
what it can
happening.
do.
So we're kind of starting to lay a groundwork of story continuity, which is, I think, a really exciting thing that we haven't really been able to do much before. We've been having a lot of kind of, Simpsons cycles where it's just sort of like the status quo gets kind of reset, but now we're actually kind of establishing that, if someone starts playing the game in 3 months, their experience to things, when talking to somebody who's been playing it this entire time is going to be a little different, because the people who've been playing this entire time go, oh, well, you should have seen it, and there was this regen tech, and it used to work, and now it doesn't work, and blah, blah, blah.
I mean, this year's focus on doing these regular patches, monthly patches, have really been interesting us from a narrative perspective on how we can tell our story.
One thing I'm wondering,
Because normally,
with the
like
lack of
unfolding
large
previously, we were doing
patches
quarterly
this
patches, and
year,
stories were unfolding in
is
a
there
certain
going to be a
amount of
much
time, and how the players
larger
experienced it was kind of
patch
very
at end of
different.
year or close to it?
But now we have a much more regular cadence, and so
Yeah.
really, like doing these little crumbs as we go and building into something bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I mean, we had 4 patches in 4 months. December, January, February, March. It's
Yeah.
with Invictus being in the middle of May and whatnot. There's a 6-week gap instead of a 4-week gap there, and then our plan is
Man.
to continue on that. So that's May patch, June patch, July patch, August patch, September patch. So you'll see drops of this going through throughout the year. So that's
I'm
that's
barely
all part of
awake.
this major change, this content-driven, less feature-driven directive for this year. Adamant One, I think I'm reading that right, in the chat says, why focus on storylines while still in alpha? And will any of these storylines repeat once 1.0 or full live release happens? You mentioned earlier, it's like when you introduced regen and the Ibrahim spheres. It was in time and place 3 years ago, and whatever. These are story moments of where we are now in our time scale.
Yeah.
So it's these aren't things that just repeat.
Well, it's also that, yeah, I mean, it's also a thing too. I mean, some of the stuff I think, I mean, we had things like Siege of Orison, which were single events that we would repeat because it was a fun game experience and stuff like that. So I think it'll probably always be kind of a balance of that.
Yeah.
A balance, huh?
Like the Line in Mine is kind of an evergreen location. It's meant to.
It's not an event.
It's not an event.
It's a
per se.
permanent addition to the.
So we're trying to balance between these story moments that you're experiencing right now with repeatable content that will kind of live
Which
on.
keeps
That's
players
different than any other
engaged.
MMO when
It
you-
really
you-
does.
When you play the level 10 quests and whatnot, they happen much earlier in the ongoing saga, but they're always still
Yeah.
gonna be there playable. So this content.
I think
is
ahead of a
designed to
larger
always be there.
patch, Brian.
Yes, I think for the most part.
That's
yeah.
my thought. I think
in the groundwork that
Nyx.
we're laying with this new
Hear me
content,
out.
even
Hear
if
me
it's-
out, Chad. I
there's a
think
story mission
Nyx
attached to
is
it,
going
so
to
taking the
be
content itself
patched
and figuring out
one
how
or
to use
two
it
for the
in a
year
repeatable,
next year
playable experience.
in YX.
So there might be more event type
Base
stuff coming this year,
building
that anything that we do, we're hoping to build into.
will kind
so
of
that
be
players
like
will
how
keep
we
getting to
tame
enjoy
that
and have
unknown
fun.
frontier,
I
right?
think what Adam might have been asking is this the 1.0 story or is this something else? This is something else.
This is something else.
This is our 2025 storyline that we're.
And to his question, why?
We'll see,
Why tell a
though.
story
I mean,
when you're in alpha.
anything could happen.
Well, part of it is this is giving narrative a chance to be an alpha as well. We've been learning so much in this past 4 months of now that the mission tools are in, now that the streaming content tools in, that we've been able to really ramp up how we deliver. And you're going to be seeing that more this year. And we've run into issues that we've been able to sort out with this earlier content and explore it as we build up to our 1.0 content.
And it's a thing too. I mean, we've been working with the designers and stuff like that. Of part of it is that giving the narrative wrapping to why you're doing something makes the doing something a little bit more engaging. So part of it is again in this push for sort of greater engagement in the experience. It's let's add a story to it. So it's not just hey, we introduced this thing, go have fun. It's there's a reason around doing it and driving players to go play.
Why not add another layer?
Yeah.
And I think it's a little bit of a thank you to the players who are playing it right now. You're playing an alpha, you're experiencing our game in development, and as part of that, you're getting to experience the regen crisis, which players who hop in to the bandwagon 3 years from now won't. So
Yeah.
You said something. You said we're learning to this, and I don't think that gets. I mean, I've been doing this for a decade now, but I don't think I'll ever get
God
tired when I
dang it.
end the show say, "What did we learn this week?" It's not. I'm not just speaking on behalf of the player and whatnot. Game development is this process of learning. Of this process, we've been learning for the last 13 years what this game that we're making is. You know, it's new people come in with new ideas, new technologies come on. We didn't think we were going to be able to have like 360 degrees fully realized planets and stuff like this. And we learn as much about how the game is changing and how to make this game every month as players learn alongside us, and that's the virtue of ISC and SCL and stuff like that. It's all of game development is about learning in one way, shape, or form, not just for the players, but for the people who are making the game. And I really liked when you said that, so I want to. And then last question about the regen crisis. Is the current respawn issue in 4.1 part of the B story, or is it a bug? No, that's a bug.
I wish it was. That would have been clever of us.
The other big addition recently is our first Banu, our first alien.
Yeah, the first alien.
Any kind.
A lot of
So
people
excited to
forget
watch
how
About
big
Wicklow. Who's Wicklow?
that development was.
It's a Banu.
All right, moving. Tell me more about Wicklow.
Yeah, so Wicklow is a new addition to Stanton system. He is a fresh expatriate of the Banu Protectorate who has basically set up a shop. He divested from his Suli and has traveled around and just he is fascinated and loves human culture, and so he decided to go set up a shop in Stanton system where he will happily trade stuff, build stuff, send you on food lunch orders. He's great.
And why now? Where did this idea that this was the time to bring this first come from? What can you remember?
We were charged with, from a design side, they wanted, this person who would take in a random collection of resources from the player who didn't have like a set style or anything, because basically this is like tier -1 of crafting almost. Like when crafting comes online later on, you'll be taking those recipe lists and you'll be filling them and you'll be putting them into your own crafting station. But those things aren't ready yet. But we still kind of wanted that gameplay loop for the players to start experiencing it.
Go find materials, bring the materials, turn the materials into a new thing.
Into a thing. And so this is the person who's kind of doing that through this trading shop. And so we were kind of thinking of like, who would we do that? And we had been really wanting to get aliens, because the Star Citizen is supposed to be populated by aliens. So we've been waiting for
Yeah, a
that.
lot of it are.
And so we kind of asked,
Is-
like, maybe?
Sorry.
And of course, like the answers at the very beginning, like we have to implement it as far as we can with the tech and resources that we have right now. Obviously, a fully PCAP'd Banu running around saying, "Hey, what's over?" It's like it's we're not quite ready to do that because those
No.
resources are tied up with that.
Well, it's just the yeah. I mean, we PCAP'd him. I mean, he is fully PCAP'd. But yeah, like needing what is the animation rig, the walk
full
cycle
custom rig
Yeah.
for a
you know,
Banu.
is something that hasn't been made. I mean, again, even the sculpt from it was relatively quick, because there had been sort of development on it, but not a real intensive like game ready asset made. So
I mean, I think some very ingenious people found a way into Wicklow's room and discovered that Wicklow wasn't quite all there yet. So for those not in the know, he's currently a head and a torso that sits behind his desk talking to you.
That's
It's
hilarious.
going to develop more as we get more time to put him in. And hopefully one day he'll be walking around his emporium interacting with you is our long-term goals. So
That's
what
nice.
Did Wicklow belong to in his past life?
I mean, I figure it was some kind of like fabrication Suli, because again, just to that's what he's been trained on and he knows how to do. I actually don't know if we've ever really delved into like the naming conventions of Sulis, but
it's usually after the person who
the owner. You're
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
The items Wicklow asks for don't seem very thematic. Can you explain why Wicklow wants these particular commodities? Seeing as he's
He might have an
I feel it would
ulterior
be more
motive,
fitting
in
if
my
he
opinion.
requested rare loot from the loot pool or something like the artifacts and war medals you can find. For the ship rewards, you should have to turn in an in-game purchased one or an exact hangar ship. Basically, this person's got a lot of ideas. But basically, the question is why is Wicklow after these things that he is and not collectible items to add to his menagerie?
Because he's also a fabricator. He's not just a collector. He's also, producing his own items, and these rare resources are something that he desired, or maybe someone else wanted to trade with him. There's kind of several excuses. It's also partially in metagaming wise, it's the timing of his release is with the Mine and Line event. So we wanted something to tie it together with that. So it was kind of convenient.
It's the intention with each patch that the things that he's looking for and asks for will change and stuff. In fact, in 4.1.1, we're introducing a guild script. A different like physicalized currency that players will find throughout the universe, and he'll accept those. Spoilers. It's my effing job.
It's also important to remember too that and this was one of the kind of beautiful benefits of him being a Banu, is that he's kind of eccentric. So to me, the thought of him going, "Hey, I want you to bring me like 30 pips cans, some Karenite, and a burrito," like made sense for him, because it's just like he's kind of weird that way.
I mean, even for a Banu, I think he's on the eccentric end of things, because he's living alone out in human space without a Suli. So like it's kind of.
And for a little behind the scenes, I'll add like one of the suggestions of this person was like, for vehicle rewards, you should be able to turn in one of the ones you've stolen and get it like this. He goes, we actually did look into that. We ran into a technical issue where the freight elevators couldn't destroy an item. So you load something in the freight. We actually tested. We actually intended to do something like that. You'd load it onto the thing. It would come down and come up with something else, but it kept coming up with the existing item, and you just kept duplicating stuff. So we inadvertently created our own asset duplication thing. So it's one of those things where it's like that aspect of it was not able to make in the initial release, but it is something we're still looking at. And what and how it will be implemented, you'll find out when it's ready. But yeah, just again, it's another example of we're thinking the same things they're thinking. We're having the same conversations they're having, and the answer almost always to why didn't they just do that or whatever is the thing we needed to do that wasn't ready. And if we waited until every single thing was ready, we wouldn't be running a live environment in the middle of our development.
Here today.
This month's story element was twofold: Wickelow's arrival and the regen crisis.
It gives
Especially
you
once
a
they were
good
both
or
after the
bad
same
angle of the
minerals. They were
event,
both
in
after
my
the same
opinion.
resources in many ways. It's like, does people helping Wickelow, is it going to hurt Rayari? Is this are people automatically bad for choosing to get their ship instead of helping the human race?
Yes. I mean, it is
Really?
it is effectively a moral choice. So, but I mean,
That's
they're
cool
technically the
though.
same
That'll
story.
work.
They're just two halves of it. So the sort of B story is the resource mining and stuff like that. But we just gave you two options of what you wanted to do with it. For people who didn't necessarily wanted to, even if they didn't necessarily want to give it to Wickelow, you had the option of going to Rayari. If you wanted the items instead of the money, you go to Wickelow. So.
And there's a good chance Wickelow's just trading them right back to Rayari for
100%.
reduced price. So
Yeah.
As far as the stuff that we've seen in his menagerie, I can't even begin. There's no vowels in this person's name. Why does Wickelow have Tessa Bannister in a cryopod? Is that really Tessa? Is it a clone of Tessa?
that could be anybody with the first name starts with a T, ends in Bannister.
Might have been the last person who shorted him money.
Is what you're not willing to confirm
Could be
that that's
Tanya Bannister.
Tanya Bannister. You heard it here first. You're not willing
Yeah.
to confirm that that's the
Confirm or deny.
Tessa.
Is this on record?
Yeah.
Oh, then no.
It's on the internet, and everybody knows you can't erase anything from the internet. I've tried.
He tried,
Like
Chet.
Peter costume. Vlaz Villainous, a longtime viewer in the chat, says nobody cares about NPCs. Give me my ships. So it's a prudent course of action.
He sounds like a joy at parties.
Regen crisis, Wickelow's arrival. We've taken a break from the fight for Pyro at the moment. So let's we get back into that a little bit in this next Invictus patch. What's happening in Pyro with these three factions right now? Where are we at in their story at the moment?
Well, I guess just to fill in the fight for Pyro is we have the introduction of a new group called the Frontier Fighters, who have who have a different take on the Pyro solution, right? Because we've established for a long time the Citizens for Prosperity, who are out there who are like, if we just resettle Pyro, we can turn it around. If there's more economic development here, then the UEE will care more, then we'll get more resources, more funds, and we can make it safe, and in turn make the neighboring system safer. And that's their plan.
So it's like a
And
plan.
The Frontier Fighters are like, no, that's going to take too long. You've been trying to do this. All you're doing is sending resources in there that outlaws just steal. You're making the situation worse. Our solution is burn it to the ground. It's called Pyro. Let's burn it up. And so they've come in here, and to kind of get the ball rolling, it turns out they pretended to be a Pyro outlaw group called the Slicers. They did a huge terrorist attack on the Stanton system. And then they're like, come on, everyone, let's get those Slicers, and trying to get the whole system agitated. Because they saw what happened when Xenothreat did their attack. They were like, this was good, but not good enough. Let's do it better. So
Tells
they
you
can.
everything you need to know about these people. the Uber racists did a good job, but they didn't go far enough.
Well, as far as agitating stand into action,
Yeah.
because pyro is one of those problems that's so big that it feels easier to ignore.
Yeah, it does.
Like, so it's easy enough to be like, it's there, it's fine, and just deal with like, oh, we'll catch this one shipjacker, we'll catch this one outlaw, but it doesn't help the larger problem of an outlaw system.
So how did the idea of the slicers / freedom fighter, frontier fighters reveal come about?
I believe it was
Just
a
to piss off
conversation with
people?
Design. They were basically looking for a.
I mean, I get
they had built a
why
sort of series of
they use
missions
them as a
that were supposed to
disposable
kind of
group.
build up towards the
but
release
still-
of the Pyro system. And so there was that initial thing of the like, oh, you can pick from these three, and then suddenly they wanted to make it shift to two, so we had to kind of figure out, like, look at kind of their outline of how they wanted to do things and figure out, like, all right, well, how can we phase it from 3 to 2, and basically kind of hit all of the markers that they needed to hit, and then tell a story that could be fun, that would sort of, again, the goal was, hey, Pyro's coming out, we want people to go to Pyro, so how do we incentivize people to go storming into Pyro? And it's
How do
it's
we
the one
order
we
them to
actually-
do something they don't
years ago,
want
we
to
talked
do?
about a similar thing for Xenothreat as well, of them taking over like the jump point station and then fleeing into Pyro. And so it was basically, the Navy gave you the go ahead to go in. So it was like a bunch of missions for players, but it's the same type of thing. Like, figure out a storyline that would ultimately culminate with the invasion of Pyro. And so we sort of circled around this idea of the Frontier Fighters being a much more hardline version of CFP, basically, and then, and talking with Design, kind of came up with this hook of the turning them into the villains, basically. So turning Frontier Fighters into the bad guys, hence why you had to fall into CFP or Headhunters.
And I'm glad I asked that question, because you answered exactly what I was hoping you were going to say.
Thank you.
This idea, looking at the questions in that thread, I think sometimes there's this idea that everything starts with narrative, and everything, it's like everybody else in the company has to do what you decide the story is, and that's not the case. It's not the case. This is a collaborative thing, and many people have a voice. Not me, or we'd have Jalopy, but other people have voices where we would like to do this, but that's something that happens quite a lot. Designers come and say, we would like to make this kind of content. We would like to do something like this. Can you help us find a way to fit that into the universe that you've created? And that's a big part of what you guys do day in and day out with this. So this question came from the chat, and it's in the Meyer was asking, Meyer, I thought better of you, man. Why can't we stay on the freedom fighters side? Why don't you let us be the genocidal terrorists who want
Because they didn't want to.
Thousands and thousands.
That's
and
not
thousands
what-
of innocent people.
Yeah, I mean,
Kind of answered your own question.
yeah. The Frontier Fighters switching into a pure enemy faction, I know some people aligned with them and they wanted to keep working for them, but our idea was always to have them as an ongoing enemy faction for the rest of the story we're telling this year. And, going forward, not every faction that you encounter in the game is going to be one that the players can actively
Interact with directly.
and they're
Okay.
these purely hostile factions. And we need them from gameplay reasons, is that as the reputation system slowly evolves, we want a similar experience for players who always can arrive in a location and have someone to attack or who is attacking them without having to worry about how the reputation system is going to change how they behave or the dialogue lines, because there's a high cost with that. We do want to have some reputation-based gameplay where the player's alignment will affect the outcome or how they experience these things.
Yes.
But that's going to be much more controlled.
It has to be within reason.
Yeah.
Has to be within technical reason, has to be within feature reason, has to be within time. The amount of time that we can invest into creating different variations. I mean, everybody that's ever played a video game that has branching storylines, you can only have so many different branches.
Yeah.
And stuff. Otherwise, you're just it just
gets
goes on and
expensive
on and on. And it becomes impossible. I say that, and then Baldur's
Becomes
Gate 3 is
impossible
like
to do.
over beer. Shout out to Baldur's Gate 3. But even there are limits, and that's like this. So it's limits in time, limits in technology, limits in functionality, and our own desires. It's I don't think we're not making a game where you can do absolutely every single thing in the universe. There's a game we learn every week, the game that we want to make. We evolve, Chris evolves, you guys evolve, we all have different ideas every week and whatever, and we start to think, this is the kind of game we want to make and stuff as we see players react and stuff like this. And it's not to say that maybe someday down the road you're not going to be able to join space Nazis or whatnot, but at this moment where we're at,
Well,
I will say no.
that's my point. But at this moment where we're at, it's like, no, that's not something we're really looking for.
but again, like, I mean, going back to the sort of the conversation about the guilds that we outlined in sort of the Road to 1.0 thing, like there's going to be a criminal guild. Like there are, if you are looking for that type of, underworld working for the dark side type, characters and interactions and factions and stuff like that, we have that. Like you will be able to work for those people. But
You can be criminals. You can be criminals. You can be pirates and everything. It's just it's just a question of how far into depravity we look.
An early version of the reputation system had a lot more factions that you're working for. They were going to be very localized so that as you traveled from planet to planet, you were starting to build your reputation up. And it turned out like that level of complexity wasn't delivering on the experience that we wanted. So we kind of have pared back so that the factions will ideally have larger differences from each other so that you're not just shuffling back and forth between like 20 identical delivery companies. Like for 1.0, we want each, company that you work for to have its own vibe, its own voice, and those are going to be the ones, and for you to grow along with them from system to system. So a lot of the factions that we previously thought was going to be Pyro only or Stanton only are going to expand out into the other systems so you can have a continuous experience as you travel through the star systems. Like, and so I think a part of that is kind of limiting who you're going to be able to grow that reputation.
Sorry, I'm not so
We're
talkative,
gonna have
chat.
local factions and local people.
I'm
that you can
literally
still
didn't
get
sleep
paying
well
jobs with
last
and
night.
do small mission chains with, but you won't necessarily be earning a permanent reputation with them that's tracked and affects other people. So it's going to be a lot more focused and hopefully deliver a more in-depth experience for those factions that you do work with.
We've mentioned in the past, obviously we spent a long time talking about Pyro and stuff in the lead up. Hopefully Nick's ain't that long.
One
Are
could
the
hope,
first
Jared.
gangs of Pyro still intended to be there? Overlords, Fire Rats, the Vipers, stuff like that, or have the Frontier Fighters and Headhunters just killed them all off?
I mean, it's an interesting idea to kind of run with the idea that Frontier Fighters steamroll their way through some of the other gangs and wipe them out. Again, it's usually that thing too of what you were talking about before, of everything kind of to build the experience that we like, or the standard of quality that we like to ascribe to stuff. Adding those gangs requires support. It requires costumes, it requires voice packs ideally, it requires ship liveries, it requires a lot of stuff that requires other teams to get involved in. So it's, that's why we usually make the distinction whenever we're kind of talking with on this or in the forums and stuff like that is, there's a distinction between the fictional universe and the in-game universe. In the fictional universe, they're probably out still running around, but whether they're represented in the game yet, right now we're not really at a place where we can support putting them in.
But as far as down the road, we have plenty of narrative room to have them show up and start having outposts dedicated to them. And I think it's about, now we've had the character art time so that they have really cool bespoke armor that makes
Trying to
me wanna
prevent
go
myself from
engage
going to
with them
sleep,
and loot them,
chat.
And right now we just don't have that in the schedule.
I mean, you kind of see it like with the Fire Rats and the contested zones, like kind of how unique they can look. Like the work that they did on that, was really awesome and shows basically where it could go. But I do like the idea of actually saying that, maybe we fictionally kill off one of the gangs, that Frontier Fighters gets a hold of them and stomps them out.
It's also hard because we're dancing around a lot of things because of what's coming later this year, and so like it's like we it's been the struggle of these kind of shows for more than a decade now. We want to share, but we don't want to spoil, and especially this year. This year has been a big focus on in-game discovery. Probably more than any previous year.
I would have.
And that's affected everything from ISC to SCL. It's why there are fewer shows. It's why we don't spoil every single thing. In 2 weeks, you're going to see the show about 411, and there's some rather sizable things in that show that we're leaving out because again, we want folks to discover it in game. We don't want to. It's I think a lot of folks sometimes. I shouldn't say a lot of folks, but some folks sometimes forget that the product of CIG is not these shows. The product of CIG is the game, and where these shows just support and inform about it. But this is not. It's.
I just want to say I really feel for all the people who've been following along with the lore that we've been releasing for the past decade, and seeing our development in real time, and they've always been representative of our thoughts at the time and our aspirations of the time. But we've changed, we've grown, and we've learned stuff. So at one point we were going to have all these gangs and we developed them because that was what the idea was at the time. And now as we learned, it's like, oh, we want less better gangs. And so we've trimmed pared down to fit into that schedule, or we know how much developer resources it takes to do it to our quality now, and we've had to adjust it. That's not to say that they're cut or gone, they just might not be showing up in the way they've come. And we talk about this with the location lore, having to adjust and change to our new tech. And so, I appreciate how difficult it is to be a Star Citizen lore fan and being like, wait, I thought it was this. And then like, you told me these gangs were down here doing stuff, and like, and I don't see them. So I know it's tough.
Plot C4 says, so without spoiling, Squadron 42 is not for this year. No, it's not. We said that at CitizenCon last year.
2026?
It's not 2025. All right, so we got a little bit more time here. I want to do some rapid fire general questions here.
This is different than the lightning round?
Yeah, this one's you can actually answer. Why do criminal groups like to live in piles of trash?
That's a good thing. I think it's a strong visual indicator to players that they're entering an area that's seedy and unwelcoming is to see trash littering around. I think a lot of times when you're fighting for your life, you maybe have more important things to worry about than picking up your protein bar wrapper.
Yep.
So.
Sorry, Vlaz is like, but what quarter of 2026? When it's ready. How come gangs manage to borrow so many large military ships like the Idris every year? These manufacturers should fire their heads of security.
Well, I mean, just look how many Polarises are flying around right now.
But yes, they should. Their security system is truly horrible.
Has the role of head of security even been invented? Like, does it exist in the Star Citizen universe? Is there some fictional reason security
They're just all
chiefs?
really gullible. They just walk in and they're like, hey, I'm supposed to take that ship out. And they're like, oh, okay. And just
There's some suspension of disbelief that needs to happen. To like, how many times will Orison be taken over and sieged before they would just shut the city down? So it's.
We've had a lot of focus on the Pyro gangs recently. This person would like to ask if you plan to focus on each of the 4 Stanton corporations a little more and their stuff.
sure.
No comment.
Okay. That's going to lead. I'm going to go right into the next question. We have introduced relatively recently, within the last 6 months.
I mean,
Foxwell.
everything's relative.
Yeah. Foxwell is now this new. I guess they're a PMC. Is that how you would classify them?
I would call them a security company. I don't think they're solid enough to be a PMC.
Okay, so Foxwell is out there now giving missions. They seem
They're
to
not
be
strong enough to be a
taking some
PMC
of the role
group.
that Crusader and Hurston Security would have in the past. Is that accurate? What's
Yeah, it's part of our 1.0 alignment as we head towards that goal of, for the major landing zones, it was causing potential issues for players to be able to earn negative rep with these companies and seeing
Crusader,
how, like, I worked for Crusader Security, I pissed them off, like, I attacked them. What does that mean for me accessing the content in Crusader now? And it had a lot of like knock-on ramifications of, it was really complicating things, having the 4 corporations who control these planets also be reputation factions. So we're going to slowly start changing towards them being more local factions where you can work for them and earn money for them sometimes, but not necessarily keep a long-term reputation with them. Instead, those beginning security jobs are going to be given out by Foxwell. And sometimes the 4 corporations hire Foxwell as a contractor to do the work for them.
And Foxwell, because they're not so obviously linked to the Stanton system, like you talked earlier about being able to continue your relationships with some of these people as you progress to different systems. Again, at CitizenCon, we revealed the first 5 systems. After Pyro is Nyx, after Nyx is Castra. I remember that right? Yeah. And then after Castra, Terra. So a relationship with Crusader when you're in Castra doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense, but Foxwell is somebody that you can build a relationship with and they can take with you as you progress.
Yeah, that was one of the one of the earlier ideas was like, oh, you're going to have to rebuild your reputation, and we kind of decided that's not what we're gearing for. So we want that reputation to have continuation across systems. So yeah, you start working in Foxwell in the Stand system, and you'll be able to continue working for them in Castra and Terra and stuff like that until you graduate up to a higher tier of security company who wants to work with you now. So.
Okay. Have we seen the last of Xenothreat?
No.
Probably not. They're like a bad penny.
Like a what?
They are a bad penny. Last 2 questions. Why aren't there more non-combat focused storylines?
Uh-oh. Here's the big one.
Again, we've only been introducing this new story initiative just started this year.
Yeah.
And we're still in the 4th month of this year. So it's not like we've.
Well, technically, it even started, I think, two months. I think we're month 2 of the storyline.
I would say with the start of Pyro and stuff like this, with the fight for Pyro and stuff. So we're really only 4 or 5 months into this initiative here.
Well,
but the missions have all been very combat. The story has been very combat focused. Even a line in mine, the regen question thing. The first thing you do is go to a big central sandbox where you're forced to fight with a bunch of people.
Yeah, I mean the from a high level, actually the B story, the science story, the Regen Crisis story is actually the non-combat one because it's science, it needs resources and and the Frontier Fighters one, which is sort of the A story, that is obviously much more focused around combat. So, but within each of them, obviously there's going to be opportunities to do both combat and non-combat. I mean, again, like I think a lot of the systems for combat have already been sort of proven out. So I think that they're from, you talk to the mission team, but I think they're a bit easier to set up. So it's faster to iterate on a lot of adding a lot of combat stuff versus just mining stuff. But as far as I understand it, like the hope is that we want to have like a very nice balance between the two, that if you don't want to fight, you don't have to fight.
Supply or die, which was kind of a refrain from that A story, a little denouement where you take a break and we introduce thing, that could be done completely without combat. You were able to mine your way to completion and get all the rewards, or salvage your way to completion. Now, what other players allow you to do, that is the universe that we're making, but it was not exclusively combat oriented. There was a path for combat and a path where you could avoid it. I think we'll see more of those things as we go on, providing alternate paths to things as the Regen Crisis.
Yeah, let's hope so, Brian.
There will no doubt be opportunities for some major combat and stuff, but there will be also ways to contribute that are not. Last question. Just looking through the list here. Two. I'm going to do 2. Can I do 2 more? I'm going to do 2 more. Sure. I know I said I'd get you out of here early, and I failed at that miserably. What are the Tavaran up to right now? Anything?
Just chilling.
I think. Hanging out in their nest?
I mean, still the 2 main storylines that we've talked about in the past is kind of, they're at a bit of a crossroads right now. and where there's a community of Tavaran who've left the UEE to kind of form a new Tavaran homeworld and try to reestablish their culture and really embrace those roots. And then there is a new kind of Tavaran movement about taking their culture and assimilating into the UEE and finding their new place as UEE citizens, and fight for their status of equality and really having a place in it.
Like genuinely going, hey, we're going to make a real effort of, we're part of this, we've been a part of the UEE for a while now, like let's really, make a go of it and stuff. And so yeah, it's the two of them kind of at odds with each other.
And I think this kind of desire, now that the war is so long past, of returning Tavaran culture back into the mainstream with Asperia's release of these Tavaran fighter ships and other forms of Tavaran culture, which were now being revitalized. It's kind of an interesting way of a combination of humanity and Tavarans working together to bring back these elements of Tavaran society that were lost.
I've wanted the Tavaran eventually in game primarily because I've always wanted to dress my Star Citizen character like Brian Blessed did in Flash Gordon, as a Hawkman.
No, I'm very excited to when we finally get around to Tavaran, because they're my favorite.
You're probably not wrong.
And then the last
Remind me-
question I want. We've talked a lot about, obviously.
Just two more questions.
Yeah. You know what? You want a show? You've hosted this show before. You're the only other person that has hosted this show. You want to switch seats? We've talked a lot about, obviously, story and narrative and stuff.
Hopefully.
And the limitations that we have as far as how we can tell stories and stuff like this. We are making some progress with that this year. We do recognize that while data pads will always be they're a part of every video game, every major story narrative video game I think I've played in the last 20 years. We do want to progress that more. Can you give us a preview of how we're progressing? Though, what would be next?
I mean, just moving up the food chain. It's audio logs. I mean, ultimately we want to get to be able to do video logs, like all that stuff. Because again, like it's the data pads are great because they're easy, they're relatively cheap, but again, part of the thing with this year has been creating greater engagement, and one of the main methods for doing that is having characters that you're interacting with. And so even if it's a one-sided thing, as far as an audio log or a video log or something like that, it's still you're reacting to a person rather than just reading text on the screen.
Folks have already seen with Wicklow, comms calls are coming back. You're starting to see some visuals, comm calls, and people being able to talk to you and deliver some exposition. Mm-hmm. Folks who are playing 411 on PTU now know there's elements of that creeping into 411 as well, with some of the new mission content that's available in 411, where we're able to have these comm calls come and talk to you. You just mentioned audio logs. I think I'll go ahead and say it is our intention to add audio logs to the game before the year is out. I'll give us a
Nice
window there.
audio
to
logs.
implement it. But we do want to make it so it's not just picking up things that you have to read. It's things that you can actually listen to and hear to help tell that story. And as we showcased in ISE with the performance capture episode just a few weeks ago, we are moving towards. We want to be able to get some of these broadcasts and stuff on screens and landing zones and stuff, and be able to push out story elements to you that you don't have to go and find yourself. So we're committed to trying to make that work this year. We're committed to trying to make audio logs this year and stuff like that, because we are very serious about our desire to tell these stories and improve the methods in which you tell the story. So.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the change to the new loading screen alone has just given us a nice opportunity.
Oh, that, yeah.
Just a little bit of narrative. Again, it's text reading, which maybe is not as exciting, but the branding team has done an amazing job of doing the art for them. And
things we can do this year without requiring too much feature work, without pulling too many resources away from finishing out Squadron 42, and without introducing too much instability into the PU. and stuff like that. It's like I said, it's all got to be managed. It's all got to be balanced within the whole. But we are making those efforts. A few weeks. It was March 13th that episode came out. Well, look at you. You can read a calendar. I've done this is my 1,217th video for Star Citizen. I can't keep track. I don't know when the last one was. Cut me some slack, man. Finaro, that was the first comment Finaro has ever made in Twitch chat, and it's to be like, Jared doesn't know how to read a calendar. You've made an enemy today, Finaro. You made one comment. I don't know how long you've been a backer. Maybe you've been a backer for like 11 years. And today you made your first comment in Twitch chat. And you made an enemy today.
Oh boy.
I'm gonna melt his ships. Can I do that? Like not
No.
all. There's just gonna be one that's gone. You're not gonna know
No.
which one. You're like, what happened? You're gonna think it's a bug. I melted it.
How do you not have a button for that on your desk
Yeah.
that you can just press?
All right. Folks, thanks for taking the time to be here, for doing this.
That's hilarious.
As a behind-the-scenes thing, Dave and Will have always been my foundation for these things. Whenever I need something and other folks are busy, folks have to cancel for whatever reason, stuff like that. It's something has to delay because it's not ready to be talked about or shown or whatever. The number of times I've had to go hat in hand to these two people and say, please help me do my job.
It was such a heartwarming statement, but also reinforced that we're never your first choice.
Oh jeez.
Well, not wrong, though. Not wrong. So, David and Will, not my first choice. Thanks for watching. We'll be back. Next week with a special behind the ships episode. It's behind the ships next week, right? Yep.
And what day is that?
Where we reveal the first ship that's coming for this year's Invictus. just
Which
a
is
little
the
bit early, so
TAC.
stay tuned for that.
I believe.
For Will and Dave. Now again, not my first choice. I am Jared Huckabee. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Jeez, Jared, you're mean, man. Bro is mean. Yeah, you're probably not wrong there, Brian. Man, I'm just saying, man. Okay. So, that was QA story so far. Then we skip to This Week in Star Citizen, April 28th. We had This Week in Star Citizen Behind the Ships, Invictus 2955, and the RSI Weekly Newsletter. Okay? Jump Flight, Invictus schedule. We have 5 days till Invictus hits. So, yeah. And everything's going to be in display here. Hold on. Ooh. Maintenance level. That's kind of odd. Yeah. Okay. So, where am I? Behind the ship. Okay, we also had Jump Point available this month, which Rock and Roll Flight School, Pledge Store. Let me see. Go to the account dashboard. Well spit. Maybe it's under settings. Yeah, there it is. Okay, there it is. This isn't what I'm looking for, but hanger maybe. Interesting. There we are. Okay. Yeah, they've redone the webpage since. So here is Jump Point 4. I think it's 2 days in a 2 things in a row. We have a all right. Sorry I'm taking so long, Chan. I'm trying to ask somebody a question. I don't think there is. Righty. So, this is an interesting picture. It clearly doesn't look like our our familiar Stanton or Pyro. This almost looks like Nyx by the color scheme. This pale blue-white light. I don't think it is, but could be wrong. So here's the golem's current form. What's that? Huh. UEN Light Fighters Pilot Handbook. Hmm. Some of the concepts, well, they look okay. Here's option A and C. B looks really cool. D, E, kinda, sorta, maybe. A2. E2. Ooh. That's kind of bulky. I'd love to see this design revisited. Definitely this one. This guy being revisited, I would be completely okay with that. This sleek looking ship. C1. Interesting. This. That is interesting. Hmm. Wow. I think this is for the tag. Yeah, it's for the tag. Hmm. Okay. So we're gonna move on from this. So we've looked at jump point. We looked at this. And now we need to go to Star Lancer attack. This was posted a week ago. And this is going to be my new favorite ship, chat. Yes.
Starlancer Attack is a variant of the Starlancer series. It kind of takes the Starlancer chassis and outfits it with a more offensive loadout. It's got remote turrets on top. The co-pilot's got some fun little missile turrets at the rear to keep people off the back end. You don't have access to every single gun on it. There's only 4 pilot-controlled guns. You'll notice immediately from the exterior that it has these new 2 twin size 5 man turrets.
What makes this MISC is the shape language that was used to make this turret. It replicates the exterior of the ship, which contains round forms, welded forms, and chunky shapes.
MISC as a manufacturer are kind of really proud of their manufacturing and they're not afraid to show it. You kind of see all the compound forms that reveal the underlying structure, where the fuel cells are. but it's a little more refined. Paneling is a lot cleaner. It's not something like a Drake ship where everything's just completely exposed. I really like the Misk look. It's got this sort of darker stealth armor, so it looks really like sleek. The
Yeah.
guys have done a really great job with the lighting on it. It's got this like really mean looking red lighting. It just looks really sick. It does not have a cargo lift, but it still has your cargo bay in the back for 96 SCU and space for holding ground vehicles. And you also have the addition of a hangar up top. There were a lot of requests for a version that could carry a ship, so I'm glad we've managed to figure that out.
It can accommodate one Fury, but if you are a good pilot, you can accommodate two as well.
What we've done is we've stripped out the Max's separate habitation rooms and replaced those with the hangar.
It's not that much big, but it's compact. It has a landing pad there with really cool small refueling parts.
We've extended the Max's habitation kitchen area to have its own bunk room. On the lower deck, we've replaced the long cargo bridge sort of area with a troop deployment area where some soldiers can jump out of like an extending gantry. And between that and the cargo bay is a small medical room.
No other Misk ships has a medical bay, so it was a bit hard at the first to get used to it, like how the design will be. What I feel the people will notice most will be the aesthetic of it. These bright lights and those metal floors. It's
More
neat, right?
clinical
But it's
looking,
not, like, very
in my
high
opinion.
maintenance.
The engineering and the cockpit are the same as the Max.
And in the cockpit, it's very spacious. It's accommodate pilot, co-pilot. It looks really cool because it's integrated with the bridge.
The turret room is located in the belly of the ship. At first glance, it resembles a shrine to warfare, with all the red lights around and the ammunition and the turret seats on the left and the right. It looks really cool. The animations are really cool, from the hatch closing over the player to the seat rotating and going into the turret, and the guns sliding out in preparation for battle.
The Star Lancer would be for like teams of players who really like missions in a large group of like soldiers. As well as like the actual people crewing the ship and the turrets, you've got quite a lot of space for ground pounders with rifles. The cargo bay in the back can be used for like some of the smaller vehicles like the Cyclone. I think it's a really good ship for like just team play.
Star Lancer Cat. Man. From there, May 5th, 2025. We have This Weekend Star Citizen. Roadmap Roundup. April monthly report. Roadmap update. All that stuff. Yep. First things first. We're gonna go here to subscriber promotions, which includes some new stuff. Launchwear Complete Collection. Idris Patch Collection and Idris PT shirt. Okay. Roadmap Roundup 3 days ago. So this is the third that we saw. Changes every 7th. So local site maintenance. This is new. This is repair. Your task with repairing equipment with fuses and repairing pipes with your multi-tool. This card has been set to committed. And then we have population control, which is also set to committed. Hunt the Idris. It's a Fleet Week mission. Polaris has been stolen by freedom fighters, and the CDF are tasked by the Navy to hunt it down through the Stanton system, isolate it, and kill it. The mission will be offered rarely, can be shared, and will only have one active at a time, so first come, first serve. Which I'm okay with. Exclusive missions, that's something we've dreamed of for years, chat. For years. Anyways, it has been set to committed. 4 new additional hairstyles also set to committed. And the Volt submachine gun quartz set to committed. Balance pass on components also set on committed. And Wakolo's special ships are Star Lancer Max, Aegis Saber Firebird, Peregrine, Zeus ES, ECL, Crusader Intrepid with top grade components. These ships can be unlocked by giving Wakolo a number of favors in exchange of rewards. Retroactively 4.1.0, the Antium armor has been set to release. The item recovery tier 0. Collision physics update released. Heavy fighter archetype balance pass. Grenade launcher balance pass. Ships and vehicle updates, which included updating the Caterpillar side elevators to improve its cargo movement, removing the 300 eyes railing to allow for better cargo gameplay, and greatly increasing the SRV's fuel storage. Further Hornet and Star Lancer Max flight mass changes as well. Turret updates for the Reclaimer, Valkyrie, Raft, and Starlifter to have several other turrets linked to the main pilot's weapons. Special ships. You have the F8 Lightning Sneak, Lightning War, RSI Polaris, Scorpius, Constellation Taurus, Mirai Guardian, C1, Spirit with top tier components. These ships can be unlocked, obviously. And then on the progress tracker, we have Redacted, Sandbox activity. Redacted, Sandbox location. Okay. Radiation gameplay. That, to me, stands out a lot. Because think about it, chat. Radioactivity. That is not fun to be around if you're unprotected. Even if you can regenerate. Not a fun way to die. Vehicle and creature. Yeah. Right. The monthly report, which was posted 3 days ago, is right here. So how long is this one? This is for April. It's medium length. It's not as long as it could be, but yeah. Not super long. Okay. Let's do this. Then check out the Inside Star Citizen, which was posted 2 days ago. So AI content team spent the majority of April preparing the release of 4.11, including communications that players can now receive from mission givers. Although seemingly straightforward, the underlying tech required underlying tech required to implement within the various connected systems was highly complicated. The team also supported this development by preparing the captured audio and animation files in DataForge. Hey, Deadhead, what's up, man? Just reading off stuff for Star Citizen. What's up with you? Just updates. I'm almost a month behind, Deadhead. Can you believe it? Absolutely crazy. I am a freaking month behind on my stuff. So bad. Okay, DataForge so the designers could implement them into mission logs. In keeping with the general directive of looking for more ways to convey the PU's overarching stories, the team began working on a new approach that, when implemented, will be an exciting new way to update players on storylines and events. Right. AI content also continued to refine NPC behavior packs and prototype lines for design to incorporate into future mission events. Once refined, these scripts will be available, approved for capture. Okay. AI features. AI features focus on refining the juvenile Valakon. Improvements included changes to its idle roam. Yeah, I hear that. Month behind on doing updates for this game. I'm almost a month behind. That's what I've been doing the last 2 hours, almost, I think. Yeah, just about. Most of I think a lot of my community's been like, where'd he go? To reduce the likelihood of getting stuck, a cooldown was added to its melee attacks, with the creature now reevaluating targets during the cooldown. Issues were fixed with the Valakar not looking at its target when emerging from the ground, too. Technology developed for the juvenile Valakar also proved useful throughout April. Now values can be set up in DataForge, general purpose data editing tool, and passed to Subsumption. Previously, these values would be set up in Subsumption itself, meaning it was hard for the designers to adjust the setup and create variations. By exposing more behavior, values such as attack range, timeouts, and use of specific melee and projectile weapons attacks, the designers can create variants for specific scenarios and gameplay situations and needs. For human combat, AI focus was on reactions, burst reactions, and escalation, which included resolving bugs with the new system, adding and refining new reactions, wild lines, and implementing new methods for controlling which events NPCs respond to. The latter is useful for specific combat scenarios where NPCs are required to focus on a particular task rather than getting drawn into combat. Refinement and polish continued on compromised cover reactions, while new prototype tech was implemented to lower weapons when a friendly fire is detected. Yeah. Pull down. In April, the Game Intelligence Development GID team worked on various StarScript improvements, allowing users to right-click task extension links and search for an existing task to connect to it. They also added edge scrolling to the editor when dragging links and implementing the ability to add a task between two others without manually reconnecting. For StarScript, the first pass of visualization and editing was completed. GID also delivered their vision for a new tool called the Density Profiler. This prototype will help validate the visual presentation of the tool, the use of thresholds of metrics, and how to interact with multiple resolutions. Okay. It's all tech mumbo jumbo. Finally, the team continued their research discussions on the mission system. The objective is to provide designers with tools to help them easily create entertaining missions for players. AI tech, which is, they began with the Pathfinder system, making various improvements and cleaning up requests involving multiple start and end locations. Based on a path's new start orientation, the devs can now readjust the initial animation for better continuation when exiting a usable. For the movement system, AI tech are improving chase target requests to allow the chasing of ground vehicle targets alongside NPCs. The challenge with this is that the position of ground vehicle could be outside navigational mesh triangle. Multiple improvements were also made on both triangle mesh navigation, voxel 3D based navigation. For triangle mesh, triangle generation issues were fixed that were propagation problems into pathfinding and navigation recasts. For 3D voxel, the team began utilizing the resulted voxels and mesh to improve collision avoidance. A lot of mumbo jumbo. On the subsumption side, the team created a synchronizing and serializing subsumption behavior state and behavior variables. Various bugs were fixed for ship AI, some relating to newly exposed functionality like flight mode and the despawning and spawning of voids. Improvements were made to cover up Generation 2, such as excluding door entities from the cover generation process and reducing the amount generated for long walls. The team is currently checking ground surface inclination to discard cover in areas that are almost not flat. A new nav spline creator tool was implemented, which will allow the designers to record ship movements and transform the captured data into a nav spline that can be utilized by ship AI. StarScript functionality was also extended, but as requested by the designers, creating new missions and behaviors. Now for the more important shit. Animation. The animation team continued to support the studio-wide initiative focusing on content for the persistent universe. They also progressed with the Valakar, supported various new mission givers and world NPCs, began work on a new creature, another one. Art ships. In the European and the EU, the team closed out tasks for Invictus, including 3 new ships planned at release of the event. The Starlancer tech was also completed for its upcoming flyable release. Progress was also made on 4 unannounced vehicles. The first is progressing through white box toward full production, so that one's almost done. While the second is approaching its gray box review and Lodo complete. The third, which was briefly shown off on a recent ISC is progressing through concept. The fourth vehicle, the first in a while from an existing manufacturer, has formally kicked off. The Consolidated Outland Pioneer continued through the pre-production and white box phases. The modular kits were solidified alongside some structural changes to improve the flow and movement through the ship. The team also continued to define core visual elements to inject the art style. Numerous paints were also created for new and existing ships for upcoming release in upcoming events. The North American content team began closing out 2 new variants. An all-new ship, Progress 2, with recent decisions being made on cargo capacity and tractor beam plates. So another tractor beam ship. The Apollo continued the gray box with new concepts for the med area and bridge. That's a good question, Big Boss. A lot of people were under the assumption, Big Boss, it was supposed to be out this year, right? Remember? That's what I'm curious about. I own both of them. The Ironclad and Ironclad Assault. I own both of them. So I'm like, what's going on with that? I'd like some, I'm kind of curious as well. Like you, I have no clue. It's a good question. I mean, you got a good point. I mean, like, can y'all, like, tell us what's up with that? I was under the assumption it was supposed to be out at some point this year, but there must have been some sort of drama behind the scenes that it got bumped, you know? At least that's what I've heard. No idea if it's true. It might be next year, which, God, that's sad if it was already in heavy development. No, they didn't. They didn't tell us at IAE. It's so dumb. So dumb. By the way, are you a new viewer out of curiosity? I didn't know if you were a new guy or, you know, you just, or if we've met before. But yeah, I agree with you. I'm kind of I am kind of legit not happy they didn't tell us at IAE. Yeah. It's kind of goofy. Hey, Squirrel Lord. Wow, it's getting a little loud around here now. Yeah, okay. I'm going to finish up. Finally, for ships, work continued on the Perseus, which I have some rumors I've heard from on the Perseus. And I'm going to elaborate when we watch some more stuff. The Perseus is the defining on the interior and functions as intended. Okay, for core gameplay. Oh, good lord. Good lordy. So, core gameplay, they spent months stabilizing and improving the new space theme missions for the upcoming patch. This included closing out. Yeah, same here, Squirrel. Same here. The first iteration of several new features, such as communication notifications. That's kind of interesting. Communication information. And mission rewards, new ones. Okay, I'll take new mission rewards. Thank you very much. Yes. Outside of new content, the team continued to monitor feedback from PTU to address community concerns as quickly as possible. Sure you did. Well, yeah, okay. As always, we are infinitely thankful to the players who take their time to contribute to testing leading up to a release. Recent tasks following feedback include investigating new issues with quantum travel and reopening reoccurring problems with freight elevators. Not again. Ship claiming and inventory flow. Have you guys been having issues with that in the patches lately? You know? Out of curiosity, have you been having issues with the freight elevators and yada yada? Elsewhere, the teams analyze performance captures, seeing where gains could be made for both client and server frame rates, especially focusing on new content. There are several more ongoing initiatives across the core gameplay teams that are either for the next few releases, long-term, or Squadron 42. However, much of the work is done for Squadron 42 will also be relevant for Citizen. So these teams work across both projects. This is an interesting comment right here. Yeah. Yeah, there was that debacle too, Big Boss. I mean, seeing ships spawn upside down. Yeah. I remember that. I remember that comment. Yeah. Ships upside down and yeah. Definitely crazy. There are several more ongoing initiatives. Oh, I've already seen that. Elsewhere, core gameplay added updates to the engineering UI screen, including countdown warnings for catastrophic explosions, and reinstated and advanced the diagnostic screen MFD. Further improvements were made to ship death. For example, fatal damage behaviors now require a significant impact. In addition, catastrophic misfires can now be triggered by nearby items falling due to severe damage. Improvements to deactivating soft death were also completed, and its effects can be enabled separately. I know, and that's what bugs me, Big Boss. It was shown at IAE next 12 months. I mean, it could still release one or two of them at the end of the year. That'd be 12 months exactly in November. Remember, it's only May. Hopefully we get some sort of news on Ironclad. I love the design of the Ironclad. It's not even like the Caterpillar. It's like a big old barge. Like a big old dredging barge. I love the design of the old irony. For flight experience, let's see. For flight experience, the team enabled the new space flight mode in their feature streams. Feature streams? They're currently resolving bugs related to AI ship motion alongside outstanding work to the takeoff and landing experiences. Several new game modes were added to allow them to test the new flight model in the future. Due to data set up, both the new and existing models can be tested separately without affecting each other. An overhaul of controls surface tech began. As such, flying in atmosphere, and especially gliding, is now much more realistic thanks to believable aerodynamic behaviors such as the nose falling in turns or accurate drag on large AOAs, specifically in regard to changing atmospheric densities. So if it gets denser, your ship will be affected a lot more easily by the wind or air currents of some sort. Yeah. There's still outstanding work on the control surface systems and interaction with thrusters and AI systems. Ooh. Core gameplay optimized the scan wave mechanic to be as oh wait, hold on, I skipped. April also saw update to the new quantum tech. In addition, adding a slow speed variant of quantum boosting, devs resolved several bugs and improved reliability and performance. It also improved ways for the mission designers to control the flow for AI ships. Further work will focus on improving the current gameplay experience and make it compatible with multiplayer. Ooh, that's cool. Okay. Core gameplay optimized the scan wave mechanic to be as responsive as possible, with focus on overwhelming contact environments where hundreds or thousands of contacts are processed in a short time. Alongside this, the team continued to polish first-person radar and scanning gameplay via regular playtests. April's work included adjusting the detection formula, highlighting visuals, and disabling the influence signature system to improve it better to serve the intended gameplay. Man. The team then made improvements to inclusion checks, such as asking a mechanic to skip checks for radar contact within the same room. This is AI behavior, I'm assuming. This allows for a smoother flowing experience while searching for items or objectives out of direct line of sight, which would previously require a full scan charge to detect. Lastly, the team iterated on box out display for radar contacts. Max optimizing and refining the marker placement. Design also began setting up which objects will be detectable by radar scanning in the persistent universe. Several major bugs were fixed, including, here's a big one if you guys got a Hull C, the one causing the Hull C to spawn with its spindle out, which prevented flight to certain ports. A commodity issue stopping ships being selectable as a destination was fixed too. For refineries, the team added the location inventory to the list of sources and destinations, while refining no longer consumes the ore bag so that it can be reused. Yeah, and that was such a money sink. For cargo, items placed on grids now take item pivot into consideration if the data is available. Okay. Economy. I think this is fixing to get switched on, chat. The economy bit. The team was involved in new content, including items and vehicles for Invictus. They also supported the design of several new archetypes, some of which have the chance to impact the universe in a more permanent manner. Meaning, these might be events that shape the very core of this universe. The team then began looking into making the economy more dynamic, testing various things. We're studying different economy models from history and fiction to get a better impression of how the economy will feel when it's fully fleshed out. The team also discussed the next iteration of item recovery. Okay, so they're evolving it, and how it will influence prices and exclusivity of different items. Work then continued on the back-end shop refactor that will provide the tools to start building a better shopping experience. Finally, the economy and data solutions team continue to create a comprehensive data plan to provide better and faster information about what players like the most. Mission design. With most of their significant recent fundamental tech work complete, the team work focused on improving mission quality. For example, players in the PDU will see the return of comms notifications, while the previous system used for Zenith Threat and Siege of Orison was difficult to update and maintain. It's now a lot easier to implement content into the game. The team are planning to slowly roll out this update across the game to globally improve mission quality. Sorry, I'm taking a break every few minutes. I'm just making sure I don't stream my voice. Sorry, chat. But talking this much does kind of wear a little bit. Okay, Alpha 4.11 will see new mission types focused on PvE ship battles. These include ambush, patrol, and patrol, one of which is a trap to kill a priority target, and patrol, where you travel along a specific route and take activities at each point. Work on these missions also allowed the team to find and fix long-standing issues with spawning ship-based reinforcements. So ship wave missions should now function better. In April, a few designers began fixing missions that missed the release. Hopefully, some of these will be in good enough state for release soon, but we are committed to quality and stability. Updates were also made to Wicklow, including the things they are willing to trade. To prevent the farming of rare components, ships were awarded by Wicklow will now only feature their unique paint, while the components will be added to the Emporium. Not sure how I feel about that, but okay. Narrative. The team's focus was on an update, suite of new missions and support for Invictus. Looking ahead, the team prepared for their next capture session, which will involve confirming trigger lists with design, writing script, casting directors, and coordinating with the various upstream departments tasked with processing the captured material. They will also be recording unique dialogue for an upcoming event, as well as adding a new NPC archetype for use across multiple missions. The team also enter the polish phase on locations that will be arriving. Wait a minute, hold up. The team also entered polish phase on locations. So something big later this year, improving the narrative flow of the area and helping branding with a final signage patch to create more immersive environments. Additionally, they continue to work on 2 new location archetypes, guiding the design and art with backstory elements to help drive the tone, as well as establishing story details. Also, with 2025 well underway, the team dedicated time to progressing their 2026 planning, including in new story opportunities. They're already planning ahead into next year, guys. I have never heard them say this in monthly reports, ever. I haven't seen them ever say they were planning this early in the year ahead. That's a bit different. Usually, they plan in January, chat. January. So, something's going on, you know? But yeah. Finally, the narrative team made a appearance on SCL to answer questions about this year's ongoing storylines. Well, what do you think about that, chat? Online Tech, they're doing live tools on various features, including sanction types, improvements to scheduling global systems messages. This is more technical stuff. To enable systems like respawn and directly reparent a player to a medical bag without needing to wait for it to stream in, streamlining and simplifying the respawn process. The team is currently finalizing the related API. R&D, various improvements were made to the lighting evaluation that's part of Cloud and Atmosphere research, remark, as well as the energy fall-off function was generalized. And an extra highlight was added to separate the center of bright lighting from much dimmer long-range impact. For dynamic weather, the temporal stability of the CPU weather map was improved. Extra helpers for CPU weather queries were implemented, and the robustness was when creating query context. This is interesting. They are working on weather. That's an interesting comment, Big Boss. I think not having an actual IAE event location, maybe due to some ships taking longer in development to be released. Possibly. I mean, you have a good point, yeah. I mean, things can be up in the air. Really, they can be. I'm really hoping. So they're working on weather. Work also began on adding texture streaming support for volumetric cloud and ground fog rendering. Sun disk rendering find sufficiently dense planetary clouds was improved and should result in more softer transitions. Similarly, the sun disk behind gas clouds should occlude correctly again. This fix corrects animated noise and banding that was observable when looking at dense clouds with the sun shining. So they are working on weather and space lighting. Last month, the UI team worked to implement unique UI styles for several upcoming vehicles. They also support upcoming events and create an environmental UI to support the gameplay and storytelling. Last month, VFX worked toward completing their tasks on vehicles and weapons for Invictus. Pre-production began on a major release, including locations, creatures, and weather. So there's a big patch coming. 4.2, chat. Keep that in mind. 4.2. Major release, including locations, creatures, and weather. It may come with another solar system, too. Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. Definitely curious what a major release will look like this year. Also, don't forget Big Boss. CitizenCon has no in-person event this year. There is no in-person CitizenCon. It's online this year. So this year is truly a weird one. Wild card. You know? It's a wild card year. And okay, now we have caught up to this. Mission I cannot spell. Compossible. There's the Polaris.
I like making missions because it's an intellectual challenge and it's a creative challenge. I like playing through the content and seeing things through a player's eyes and trying to craft an experience.
Do you think players like missions?
I hope players like missions. In Alpha 411, we are going to be dropping about 60 new missions, and it's going to be our biggest drop since 4.0. Let's start with our big headliner, Hunt the Polaris. Hunt the Polaris is a mission where the Frontier Fighters have stolen a UEE Polaris, which was bound for Invictus, and they're trying to escape with it and get it back to Pirate. Your job is to stop them.
We can't let them get away.
In order to stop them, you are chasing them around Stanton. You have to search for them, you have to ambush them, you have to defend other ships from them as well as they continue on their path to Pyro.
When you encounter the Polaris, it won't be alone.
Starlancer Tech's going to be a must for this mission. I'm going to enjoy this.
What's really cool about this
I'm going to
mission
go
is
on
you
the
don't
hunt.
have to do it alone.
The Polaris quantumed away.
The UE have sent their own guys as well. And there's a hammerhead that, if you keep alive, will help keep you alive too. I think it'll be a really good test of just how strong your friends are, and yourself too.
Next, there are 12 different patrol contracts split between Headhunters and Foxwell.
Foxwell being the faction that gives you the legal version of these missions, and Headhunters will give you the illegal version.
Foxwell Enforcement, they've hit
Okay, here's the recently released Heartseeker.
hard times, so their background checks and whoever they hire is a bit more loosey-goosey.
Headhunters are now operating for the first time in Stanton. The Headhunters want you to patrol an area of space that they consider their own and make sure their interests are allowed to operate safely.
The patrol missions in 411 are a little different than our standard missions. We wanted a mission that was not linear. You will go to a point throughout space, and it will randomly generate between our pool of current objectives. Currently, there's 4 objectives that it can generate between. So you'll go to point number 1, it will pick between...
There it is. Okay, here it is. Here's the new bad boy, chat. Here's the new enchilada.
...that it can generate between.
This is the Asgard. Just so people know. I can talk about this since it's in an Inside Star Citizen. Yep. This is the Asgard. A Valkyrie variant that is...
So you'll go to point number 1. It will...
You know what it looks like, chat? A pelican. From... Look at its back end. Tell me this doesn't look like a pelican from Halo. It looks like one, or an advanced pelican.
We'll pick between one of those 4 objectives for you to complete. Once you complete it, it will send you to another point in space where it will generate another objective, and so on until you've completed 3 points.
Scans are showing outlaws inbound.
Objective 1 is a traditional kill all the ships that appear. That doesn't really require any more explanation. Objective 2 is protect a ship that's under attack from the bad guys. Objective 3 is a new objective called Search and Destroy. And Objective 4 is what we're calling the empty objective,
Not seeing anything.
where you show up and actually nothing happens. I have to say that people don't think it's a bug. Search and Destroy is a new objective that we've created. We wanted an objective that was less heavy on combat.
The player will go to the location and they'll receive a certain number of areas to discover. It's up to the player to go there and ping and scan with their ship scanners and discover what's going to happen. The player may discover friendly probe, that's one of the UEEs. You're just going there to make sure it's all operational.
Everything is in order?
Or you may discover that there's a hostile one. It's been hacked by another organization and you're there to destroy it.
Seems this satellite's been hacked by outlaws. We're gonna have to take it out.
In some cases, if you destroy it, then the people who own the satellite won't be very happy with you, so they'll QT
Of course
you
they
and start
won't.
attacking you.
How dare you
We're
destroy
hoping
our
that
shit?
If this mission goes over well, we can slowly add to that pool to make Patrol a sort of mission that will continue to expand upon until we have, say, 15 or 20 random objectives that can trigger. But really, we're only going to do that if you guys like it, so let us know how you feel.
I'm Lucas Baransko, but my students call me Gilly.
Longtime player.
Wow. Gilly. He was before my era, but it's nice to see vintage missions return. I'm not sure if anyone in chat ever dealt with Gilly back in the old days, a long time ago. But yeah, Gilly is from well before I was ever involved with Star Citizen. I'd say in the dark times before 3.0. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Players might remember Gilly from the tutorial from way back in the day. Gilly is a very experienced combat veteran. It was really good to have him in the game the first time round.
Gilly also appears in 3 new Invictus training exercises where you'll be able to be shown what a patrol mission could be like.
Prepare to engage.
This is not a tutorial, but it is a series of increasingly difficult combat scenarios.
These 3 missions are so that the player can feel like they're part of the UEE, so that they can get a taste of what it's like to be part of the organization that protects Stanton.
Congrats on completing another part of your course.
These are just here while the Invictus event is on to add a little bit more flavor.
Where there's a unique reward for completing.
There are also now 12 new ambush contracts, also split between Foxwell and Headhunters.
An ambush mission is where you lie in wait for your target to appear before striking them fast and hard.
So it's a mission for...
No, for tactical masterminds.
Tactical masterminds, he says. Okay.
So Foxwell is giving these ambush missions because they are being paid by outside contractors to take down dangerous individuals around the Stanton and Pyro systems, which are causing trouble for their clients. And Headhunters, well, they just ambush anyone. They want stuff.
When you get to the ambush location, you will be asked to hide inside a new high emission zone.
Which means that the enemy can't detect you when they jump in. So first there's a wave of scouts, that shows up, and they're going to scan for their valuable transport to arrive on time. And since they don't detect you, they give the all clear. The target arrives, and that's the moment you jump out of the high emission zone, which will make you appear on radar, but it's too late for them to escape, and that's when you take down the cargo hauler. I'm really excited about these missions because the high emission zones will unlock further options for anyone to make really cool missions, both PvE and PvP related.
Cool.
Many of these new missions have a chance to spawn an ace pilot.
This guy's just picked up a ship that we've tagged as extremely dangerous.
Yeah, no worries, man. It's all good. It's all good. It's all good. Hey, we all get confused once in a while.
Inside those missions that you'll have to deal with.
Talking about their skill.
You're good.
Their skills crank. I can't crank it any harder. So I'm thinking, so skilled is definitely their name.
And if you are lucky enough to be able to take him out, you can loot his corpse, and he will have some considerable amount of guild script on him. These script are in-game items that you can pick up and collect. You are getting one script for a council and one script for the Mercenary Guild. And you can use them as currency for collector missions. He really, really wants these guild script. As part of Invictus, we are adding our very first ones as a kind of scavenger hunt around the halls.
Yeah, look at this. This is our first monetary currency that is physical. There are two of these scripts. I'm assuming there are going to be more down the road. You know, am I foolish to assume that? Probably not. This is going to change how we get paid.
Them away as mission rewards for the new.
Okay, pause here. So we have the Mercenary Guild script, and we have whatever this is. I think this is the Assassin's Guild. Or does anyone know what this is? Which guild this is? We have the Mercenary, and then we have these guys.
Combat missions. So there will be even more ways to get those new collector ships. Oh, there's also new collector ships this patch, but I don't know what.
Yeah. That's a big change, boss. Big, 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 big change. Think about it.
Of course, it wouldn't be Invictus without visiting the Invictus halls.
This year's Invictus Launch Week returns to Area 18. As you're in the shuttle and approaching the Bevic Convention Center, you get met with the new slogan of this year's Invictus. As you walk out of the shuttle, we walk into the lobby and we take the elevator down. We get met with the beautiful hologram of the mighty Idris itself. As we're walking further into the halls, you'll be able to find all the new ships for this year's Invictus. We can see that this year's Invictus looks a little bit different than what we're used to. This year Invictus will not feature different daily layouts, but instead has a better, well-crafted layout for the entire duration of Invictus. We can see that there's extra care being taken in the presentation of the ships. This really shows the might of the UEE. At the entrance of the halls, we can see the rental kiosks. This is where you'll this year be able to rent.
At least they have a lot more kiosks this
year. Make sure to return to these kiosks as they are on a daily/bi-daily rotation. Invictus this year is not just about ships, but it's about the way that you customize your ships, how you create your own experience with your vehicles, and how you truly make your vehicles your own. So let's check out the Idris tour at Area 18 Central. As you walk and you look up, you can already see that the Idris is hanging straight above.
Oh, that's cool.
Go towards the
There's
IO
the
North
behemoth.
Tower and take the elevators up. As we continue over towards the IO North Tower and take the elevators up.
Look at the scale, chat. This is the Idris P. Peacekeeper. This is the ship I own. I own this ship. Well, one of them. I haven't decided a name yet, but yeah. I own one of these mighty vessels. Definitely one of my favorite big ships. Y'all got any names for me? Cause I'm all ears. 'Cause yeah, I think the kiosk will change. That's what I've heard too, Big Boss. I don't think the event area per se will change. I think they're going to have everything on display, which is when Invictus hits, I'm going to do a day one stream. That way I could show everyone what's going to be up for grabs this year when it opens, you know? So yeah, be prepared for that. How many days do we got? 3 or 4 days, I think. Yeah. So be prepared for that.
As we continue over the platform, we get met with the Idris itself. Please take some time to explore.
Is it the P or M?
I'm super excited about it.
Oh, look at that. Oh, wow. Look at this
This
missiles.
year, I think we've done something a little bit unexpected. I think the way that everything came together really clicked this year. I hope that the players will also see the care and love that we put into making this year's Invictus special.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, 411 is a big suite of ship combat content. It's been a little while since we've gotten to do something like this. We've heard some of the criticism that sometimes we're FPS citizen, and we hope this goes some way to help address it.
How do you feel having this patch sit on your shoulders?
I think it's a lot of pressure, but it's also very, very motivating. There's a lot of work to do, but we know we can do it. Just gotta get it done.
And as you can see, this year's Invictus is going to operate just a little differently than years before. Now, in addition to the more than 60 new mission contracts being added to Alpha 411, there's also a new way to earn secondary currency for Wicklow, and in the future, his guild brethren, new ace pilots to
Hold
test
on.
the mettle of our greatest flyers, and then, of course, our first tour of the Idris Peacekeeper, and
Hold on. Did you catch that about Wicklow? The future of his guild brethren. There's going to be more than just Wicklow in terms of the Banu. Listen what Jared says here, Big Boss. Listen.
secondary currency for Wicklow, and in the future, his guild brethren.
Pause. Wicklow and in the future, his guild brethren. So I'm assuming that means we're going to deal with Wicklow Sully. That's going to be interesting. And it may bring a whole new host of missions. Why do I say that? Well, traders need protection, rare commodities to sell. We may get alien, what do you call them? Alien contracts, emissary contracts, you know, between the guild and ourselves. So, yeah. Yeah, the Idris P. I've heard rumor. I'm hoping we get some good paints. The Polaris got some. I also own the Polaris, and I think the Idris deserves some good paints too. The Polaris needs like a silver paint, in my opinion. Yeah.
new ace pilots to test the mettle of our greatest flyers, and then, of course, our first tour of the Idris Peacekeeper and a more robust convention center than ever before. One that loses the rotating inventory to highlight all the ships arriving at this year's event simultaneously. There's also those new flight blades y'all have been talking about online.
Blades.
And even some weapon and item packs that'll let you breathe new life into existing vehicles like never before. You can learn all about that stuff on the Robert Space Industries
Very true.
website as the event starts proper on.
See, the fact that we're getting new aliens in, boss, means the game is fundamentally changing into more of a game. We're leaving tech demo situation way over here, and we're starting to move into actual gameplay, content, stuff like that. A lot of people haven't noticed the shift yet, but it's happening around us.
On May 15th. And then it continues to cycle through all of our manufacturers every 2 days until the end of the event. That part stays the same. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared.
It would mean,
thanks for letting us share the people and process of game development.
I'm hoping at least 3. You know, 3 with a.
This year's event next week. And then.
Okay, hear me out. 3 standard paints for the Idris and 1 exclusive paint, like they did with the Star Lancer attack. 1 exclusive, right? Yeah. So we have like, okay, hear me out. Navy gray or navy blue, olive drab camo, like a white, maybe like a black color. Those are my thoughts. You know, like some very military looking colors. Just an opinion.
1 minute later. Oh, and before I forget, the ISC team is hiring. We're looking for 2 more of the game capture folks. You know, those people that make the B-roll and stuff. You get to work in the most broken builds imaginable for like weeks before Evocati, and they're on NDA. So, and then you have to try to make unfinished stuff look great. It's legit some of the hardest work that we've got. But boy, is it cool and fun, and you get to work with some of the best people.
Quit trying to pitch it.
Others. You know, you can find the listing at Cloud Imperium.
Black and gold. There we go. That's a good color. Yes. Now you hear me. Black and gold.
Yeah. That'll do it.
There we go. Black and gold. Yep. Elu's ahead.
Okay, that's it.
Now there is one more video, and it comes from the Chinese Bar Citizen. From what I heard, there was some interesting stuff mentioned in this surprise Bar Citizen. But first, we're going to go back to the page, make sure we didn't miss anything. I don't think we did. So, where is Bar Citizen? Okay, hold on. Now, I will say this. I'm not going to borrow the... Okay, here we go. It's kind of tacky, but... Yeah. It's an interview with John Crew. So let's watch this.
No, okay, we'll get right to it. So, vehicle gameplay questions from the Chinese community with John Crew.
Also, Greasy Khaleesi filmed this.
Right off the bat, will there be more types of ground vehicles?
Yes, there's obviously we have a range of ground vehicles at the moment, but they're pretty much
Bear in mind,
either wheels,
Bear in mind, we don't know. There is some lag and stuff while listening to this. So, just so y'all know.
Tank tracks and a couple of hover ones, but they don't really cover the full range. Like I know you've had Alberto on SEO in the past doing like the chopper and like the Origin hover tank, and
Origin hover tank. I forgot about that thing.
Do more in the sort of gaps we have, like let's say combat hover vehicles rather than transport ones.
Yeah, I've always had, I feel like we've been doing this for 10 years now. I feel like at some point you and I have had casual conversations about some kind of like mobile base that kind of hovers around, like a floating platform with doors and rooms and stuff like that. Something more akin to a ship, to a proper ship size, like a Cutlass size or a Freelancer size, but ground and hovering and stuff like that. I always remember, I grew up with G.I. Joe and stuff, and those mobile base things are Rolling Thunder. Especially if it hovers, which is really confusing me.
Those were cool toys.
Like I think there's a lot of room for that kind of
stuff. It's definitely something we've talked about and looked at in the past. We have obviously ground vehicle garages and we have ship hangars. And the slight problem that has always somewhat interfered with that plan of a larger ground vehicle is our ground vehicle garages aren't big enough. Our ship hangars are, but not necessarily every ship hangar you can hover or drive a vehicle out of. Especially the ones with the CDX. So it's coming up with a solution to that, and then we could have maybe not. I always forget the film with the big rolling thing in cities.
Mortal Engines.
Mortal Engines.
Hey!
Probably not that big, but
there we go. We can actually understand without the echoing.
Plus, I think if we're being real candid and honest, I think we need more gameplay systems that utilize ground vehicle technologies. There's a couple. I was just had a meeting with Rick Porter, your design director from PU, last week, where I wanted to pitch, like, if we get, when weather comes online and stuff, being able to keep ships out, but having like giant Sturgis-style, hog-wild, kind of events that require hundreds of ground vehicles in place and stuff would be super cool. And that's just casual conversation between me and the design director. It's not a commitment to an idea, but it's just I think there's a lot more we can do to incentivize the use of ground vehicles.
We have a lot of ground vehicles at the moment, but there isn't a lot of use, and the use they have sometimes is not ideal.
So if
sometimes it's not ideal.
Then I think it'll be a natural kind of progression. Yeah, let's find out what other kind of ground vehicles we can add to this. All right. How do you design ship living quarters? What equipment and features are essential for gold standard?
So in terms of gold standard, living quarters really depends on the role of the ship. Obviously, some ships don't have living quarters, and that really is a soft gate for how far and long you can use that ship. If you don't have living quarters, eventually food, drink, hygiene, and I guess tiredness.
Okay,
become your limiting factors.
Oh my
So if you
gosh.
want a ship to go a long distance, you need living quarters, and then they come in different scales. We have the bareboat one with beds that currently let you log in and out. Beyond that, if you have food, you need somewhere to get rid of the food when it's being processed, so they all have toilets or showers. And then for the more grandiose and luxurious ships, you go from here's a bunk bed with a food machine in the wall, and you sit and eat your food, or stand and eat your food, to you have a room which has a seat, bed, toilet.
Fascinating stuff.
Real world military ships doesn't have their own quarters. You have bunk rooms with shared mess and galley, all the way up to luxury ships like the A90. Everyone has essentially their own apartment with everything in it. So it really depends on the role of the ship and the type of the ship. And it's got to have a bed. If it has food, it's got to have toilets. If it's a toilet, it might have a shower there as well.
And this is all in preparation for gameplay systems that come online.
Yeah, at the moment they're very much role-playing things. And we spend a lot of time internally, I can use our toilets and showers.
We're not gonna put a wall.
Yay.
If by the time your time here is done, my time here is done, if we don't have poop gameplay,
Yeah. There'll be one of the directors who will be very upset about that as well. We don't have that.
this is the face of somebody who wants poop gameplay. Okay, Chris, if you're there watching, sorry. On the other side of this, single seat fighters. We obviously don't have living quarters or anything. Will single seat fighters and similar ships allow for in-cockpit eating and drinking? This is, I love seeing this question right now because there's this, this thing that happens where,
Yeah, that ship is huge.
you're having to take off
Big boss.
or whatever, you didn't get a chance
You're
to
absolutely
stop and
right.
top up your vitals beforehand. There's nothing worse than, you're flying in your Avenger or whatever and you die of thirst because you can't pop a survey ticket.
Don't drink it fine.
So, will single-seat fighters and similar ships allow cockpit drinking and eating?
For me personally, yes, that is something I want. Ultimately, that is not my area of responsibility. It's more of an overall game direction thing. But I don't see why we wouldn't allow that in the future.
Are there plans for more ship weapon types? Obviously, we're seeing in the FPS weapons, the bolt weapons, which we talked about for a while, are finally making their journey from squadron to the PU. Are there additional ship weapon types that are percolating in someone's head here?
There are a couple that, if I get my dates right, people will be seeing very soon in game. Again, things trickling from Squadron into Star Citizen. Beyond that, we haven't really looked into new weapon types. It's more expanding the range of the existing ones. So at a very simplistic level, we have ballistic ones, we have energy ones, and distortion ones. We have cannons, repeaters, Gatlings.
Gatling.
And they have gaps in those
Ooh,
types.
I'd love that.
We also have the size ranges within that. So it's filling those out, giving them different flavors first, before we chuck in another archetype.
For me, I mean, obviously, I'm a Star Wars guy and whatever, but my affinity for Star Trek has always made me want beam weapons. We talk about beam weapons. I feel like it comes up every year. And maybe not for you don't want to see a Gladius flying around with a beam out of its nose or whatever. But for these larger ships, like a Hammerhead and above, the ability to have like beams would just be such a cool visual. And that's one of the things I every once in a while I just kind of hope. I'm like, is this the year of beam weapons?
I think this is the year of beam weapons.
Oh, you think this is the year of beam?
Yeah.
I faked a reaction there. I was aware that it's a year of beam weapons. Can ballistic weapons have quick magazine swaps? Currently, their sustainability is limited to resupply or full weapon replacement. Is this intentional for balancing energy in ballistic weapons?
Yes, that is something we definitely want to do. Chris mentioned this to me again last week before. Going back to the previous topic about filling in the gaps, we're looking at filling in some of those gaps, and some of them are ballistic ones. And as part of the design for them, they do have, or will have, physical magazines that you can use. So from the outside, you can say Gladius. Gladius, for example. Let's go Avenger.
Man, they really had some bad desync on this. Holy cow. I mean, I'm just saying, chat. Such bad echoing, too.
Will be like that. It's not, say, practical on a hammerhead to have all 24 guns, ballistic, and someone's going to spend all their time outside the ship, EVAing around in combat, trying to plug magazines in. For some ships, they will have essentially an internal reloading mechanism, and that will take the format of, there will be a designated area in the ship, which should hopefully be near the cargo supply. And it's similar to how base building will work in that you'll be taking your resources, in this case, boxes of ammo, feeding it into the machine, which will then put it into the ship's internal storage, and then the ship itself will resupply to the weapons that need it. So rather than you have to manage 24 individual magazines, someone will just be feeding the crates of ammo in as needed.
My understanding is that that's the only real reason to have children.
Yes.
Wow! Ouch! Jared!
It doesn't change because it's
Much pain, man.
Can the Moby-class ship interface include remote control of doors, elevators, and cargo ramps? So we've been...
Yeah, pause here for a second. Yeah, Big Boss. It's super bright and washes out the set, you know? So yeah, it is kind of tacky, but you know, over there, if I were a guest there, I wouldn't complain because, you know, hey, at least I'm seeing it. Yeah, it kind of washes it out, though.
Really want this to be a thing, pushing on it internally. Again, it's not directly in my wheelhouse, so it's subject to other teams' schedules and direction. But yes, being able to unlock, lock, open doors from Moby-class for your ship.
Sorry, the beginning of this year, this is a good time as any to reiterate this. You know, at the beginning of this year, we had Benoit on and talked about the big change in focuses this year. This year's focus for feature teams is on closing Squadron 42 out and improving stability and performance without introducing the stability and hits that come with new features. We don't know how long it's going to last, but we're definitely still in that period right now where we're still refining, we're still fixing up the PD, stuff like this. So it's not a anytime soon kind of thing. Just to put a little expectations management on it. But a lot of these things, we've got this laundry list. I think there's things that we're all challenged with.
I know that the team that's doing it has a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of stuff that players ask for, like the 3D landing camera on the radar. Right? They're doing that before.
Yeah, but it's always been, you know, it's the choice in years previous has always been go to the new feature, go to the new feature. And this year we're making the choice to go to stability, to go to performance like this, and that benefit is very apparent already. And there's still more.
Excuse you, Mr. Dude.
So while it can sometimes be hard to accept the weight for this thing that everybody wants and whatnot, I still think it's the right decision this year, and I think a lot of folks would probably agree. This focus on stability and performance this year is paramount. And then the eye of development Sauron will turn back to new features for the PD.
Development Sauron.
Some weapon and missile hardpoints carry other tools like fuel tanks or electronic pods.
That is something, not those two specific things, but again, not to give too much away, but in the very near future, we're going to start experimenting with some alternative options for what missile ranks can carry.
Right. Yeah, you're of course talking about Invictus Launcher.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Well, yeah. I mean, staying on one subject.
On the exterior ships, on the airplanes and interior. Some components for concept. So look out for that.
Yeah. It's getting very confusing filming this in advance before flying to be here with everyone in this room wherever I am.
Oh yeah, say something to future you.
Hello, please get a haircut before you go to China.
Currently, marine seats on ships feel underutilized. Will they have unique functions in the future?
Assuming this is drop seats, yes, they sort of do already, but it's sort of underutilized or unnoticed feature in that we do impart G-forces onto loose actors within ships. So for dropped ships, if you have 20 people crammed in the back of the Valkyrie and the pilot does a hard turn, you're all ragdolling and falling over. It doesn't happen really as much as we want or the way we want it. It's very binary, like big impulse happens, everyone falls over. Whereas the way Chris is talking about it is your gravity generator on ships, which is not yet a physicalized item but will be, sort of lags in its compensation of gravity. So rather than being too much gravity, everyone fall over, it's hard turn, gravity's failing and everything starts getting loose, and if it continues, then people start, not necessarily falling over, but almost like EVAing inside the ship because the gravity cannot keep up with the force and the directions. So then, being sat in the seats, you'll not have to deal with any of that. But the counter to that is we want to make dropships be more utilised. At the moment, they're probably not tanky enough to they don't have enough health to survive the drop in versus other ships. So we've got to bump that up to get people using them.
Dropships are literally the living manifestation of putting all your eggs in one
Yes,
basket.
they need to survive the drop for people to bother using them. So it's sort of a cyclical thing.
The Zeus's design is impressive, especially the interior. Will the Galaxy follow a similar style? Boy, I hope so.
Yes, obviously we talked about CitizenCon doing the RSI ships in sort of sequence. So we've done the Polaris, doing the Perseus at the moment, and then the Galaxy will be after. The difference between the Galaxy is it's a civilian ship, it's not the RSI military theme. So the Polaris and Perseus share a lot of visual cues together and materials and lighting. It does take bits from Zeus, but not everything. And we will see more of the Zeus styling in the Galaxy and other RSI ships this year. Will have that Zeus aesthetic rather than the Polaris and Perseus one.
I love that. The RSI interior, the Zeus interior. Yeah, personally, I'm not a big fan of it. Shape, but the interior just knocked me off the butt. I love the Zeus interiors. You mentioned the Perseus. I read on Reddit that that's coming in a big decision.
It's not.
Those ships like the Cavalier and Kraken have quite a bit of functionality. Loading and unloading on the ground is currently cumbersome. The Caterpillar is an interesting.
The Caterpillar is an interesting pain point. So we recently changed the side doors to go down to the ground to sort of improve that, and it sort of improved some things, made other things worse. That's not how we want to do it. I think retrospectively, if we were designing Caterpillar today, it would not have doors like that.
Well, knowing what we know today versus what we knew in 2020.
So we're sort of hamstrung by that design. Whether we will entirely redo that, I don't know yet. But we do, if it stays in that design, we do still want to have the 3-state doors. The current limitation with the existing doors, I saw the moment on Reddit for that list today. Doors in Star Citizen have 2 states, open or closed. The Caterpillar doors, side doors, are doors, so they are closed or they're open, and it's just where that open state is. So we chose to move it all the way down to the ground to improve things. We can't currently add a 3rd interim state, so open, and keep it there. Yeah. We do want to have that state, but that, again, it's a feature. Anyone that's ever worked in games knows how horrendously complicated doors are. It's the big need.
Doors and elevators.
Doors and elevators. And we can't use elevators or transits because they're essentially using platforms.
Let's be honest, their current elevators suck. I've seen a bunch of people getting stuck in them.
That's why we're stuck with 2 states.
Trying to think about how those patch notes would go off. We've added 8 elevators to your Caterpillar.
8? 8? Oh my gosh. 8 elevator revisions. Jeez. That's a bit much, chap. 8.
But we are going to be looking again at the concept soon, because hopefully towards the end of this year, it will be going into...
Yes, it does, Big Boss. Yes, it does, man.
Going into production.
Going in pre-production.
Not coming out this year. Read my lips. No new Kraken. Wow, that's a George H.W. Bush.
Oh, there's a redesign also coming up of the Kraken. Possible. It's going to make a lot of people angry. Did you catch that, Big Boss? Did you catch that they may be redesigning the Kraken? That's why I paused for a second. Two-step button for doors will fix the Caterpillar. I think they're trying to figure that out right now. So that's a really good question. Really good question. I mean, yeah, I mean, I understand. Well, gotta remember the Kraken is a very, very old concept. A lot of people are angry, but so's the Pioneer. Pioneer's having to get a fresh coat of paint. Yeah, okay, I'm following, yeah. Kind of like the Corsair, but a button. Oh, you mean like how it switches configuration? Yeah. Okay.
Can the reclaimer, oh, here's the second. Can the reclaimer's rear cargo platform be adjusted to avoid blocking 8 SCU plus of cargo?
Here's the reclaimer question. Annual reclaimer question, folks.
The reclaimer's an interesting one. I'm aware of that issue. It's something, if I can find someone free to do it, but it's a snowball effect with the reclaimer. Everything is, the way it was built back in the day is not conducive to quick and easy changes. It's sort of, you change that, you end up having to change a lot of the rear room.
You change that, you're having to change the whole ship. Yeah.
An interesting quote we found when we did the whole sea. So obviously the whole sea took forever to come out. We did a lot of the work 2017, and then we waited years for the features to be ready. And when we came back to it, the way we build ships now is different to then. Oh yeah. And the moves we hadn't done, we did, and the two clashed visually significantly. So we sort of ended up having to downgrade the current art style and slightly upres the old art style to make it not look so jarring, and the reclaimer would suffer from the same thing. So, in my opinion, if there's something quick and easy we can do, we'll do it. But that whole interior needs a complete, not redo, but reimagining.
Newer citizens might not know, folks who have followed the project for 13 years would definitely be able to tell folks about how process and procedure have changed and evolved over the years. You know, the way we make anything in 2016 was not the way we were thinking about doing it in 2012. It's not the way that we learned to do it in 2020, and it's not the way that we've come to understand things in 2025. I mean, there's a reason we call it game development, not game construction. Drink. He said the thing, and whatnot. It's so many of these ships. I can't help but notice the Caterpillar, the whole scene. I mean, these are old Jim Martin ships who I love, who was at the very beginning, along with Ryan Church, developing these things before we had things like metrics, before we understood all of our game mechanics and how they would actually function versus how we imagined they would function and stuff like this. So yeah, I think we started seeing, obviously we started seeing Mark IIs and stuff like the Hornets and stuff like this. And I imagine some ships will probably just get a Mark II and whatnot. Other ships, like the Reclaimer, the Caterpillar, need some more TLC, need some more, time going back and fixing those things.
Yeah, the question that is starting to pop up more and more is what necessitates, what drives the reason for a Mark II versus just update the existing one. And really that comes down to, we can do a Mark II for something that functions, and we just want to sort of deprecate the visual style of it. The Hornets, for example, there's nothing wrong with the Mark I Hornets. We just wanted to have the cooler Mark II Hornets visually out there. But for things like the Reclaimer,
yeah, I'm gonna agree with you, Big Boss. When it's about the Kraken, I don't know if they ever have white or gray box of it. Anyway, the Kraken, no matter what, will need to look the same with possibly slightly different details. Kind of like the Hornet. I agree. They basically said the Kraken might be entering pre-production toward the end of the year. We shall see. Hopefully we get an inside Star Citizen on it. And they're like, oh yeah, the Kraken. Yeah, it's in development. We can hope. We can certainly hope. But I can assure you, the Kraken will look totally different from what it looks like now. Yeah, and I stand by that comment.
If we made a Mark II reclaimer, we've still got to make the Mark I reclaimer actually function how it's supposed to function with the salvage mechanic. At which point, that's redoing a lot of it. Yeah. So there won't be like a Mark II reclaimer. The amount of work will just be an updated reclaimer.
Just a couple more questions. We'll wrap up here. Modules are often expensive optional additions. Will modules for ships like the Galaxy be available for in-game currency upon release, so players aren't stuck with half-functional ships?
The modules is an interesting one. Part of it's an economy reason, part of it's a marketing reason, and part of it is
pledge law.
Yeah, like this. The Retaliator is really the only one that we've released with modules, and it sort of has an awkward. There was two ways to get a Retaliator at the time. There was the original pledge, which it was a bomber. It wasn't much of a and then there's the modular version. When that was announced, you couldn't get the bomber one anymore, so people were pledging for the base one with no modules, and then you opted into the modules after that. So when we came to deliver it, we had to deliver both of them. So there was a lot of people that had the bomber one as like a loaner ship for their one without it, and were surprised that they didn't have anything. And the current rules set is it's the same as any new ship, that it will be available.
Yep, you got a good point, Big Boss. I agree.
For its actual release. So,
I know the amount of time. Right now, I just can't remember it specifically. I don't want to say the wrong thing right now, but it comes down to there's again. I'm not going to get into it. There's general marketing stuff, and then there's actually some laws and crowdfunding pledge that you have to deliver the thing to those people who paid money before you can give it to stuff like that and whatever. So I don't have to worry about that stuff, which is why I don't have the information.
I don't know if it's the case right now, but the Retaliator modules, maybe they're not in the in-game shops. Maybe there might be a...
I don't think they are.
Why they're not in there, but I genuinely don't know. But we can look into it.
But some of those have been around for
a while. Those should have passed the data requirements.
Can ship hull damage and breakage effects, as seen in Squadron 42, that's Maelstrom, be implemented in the PD?
Yes, that is the plan. Maelstrom is full speed ahead in Squadron. My team and a lot of other teams are working on it currently. I think they're about, at the time of recording, about, I'm going to say, 70% of the way through converting the ship required for Squadron to Maelstrom. So it's been built in a way that facilitates, we take the existing damage model that's in Star Citizen, press a few buttons, that's the Maelstrom version. It visually behaves the same, but it's using all the physical behaviors under the hood of it. That's converted to Maelstrom, that's the 70% quote. After that, Tech Art and R can go in and chop it up more if they wish.
Make it better,
make it better, shinier, break into more parts, make it more believable. And that's been done on a case-by-case basis, so we're doing all the hero ships, all the ships you fly and fight the most, and getting that first. So the actual fully Maelstrom conversion is a lot lower percentage. But overall, we're quite a long way through it. There's a lot of ships used in Squadron, but a lot of them are only used once, so they're just going to get the peak damage model ported to Maelstrom. Done.
We give you a little behind the scenes It was, gosh, it was just a week or two ago when I messaged him about something or whatever, and Jesse looked at me, he was like, I'm in a maelstrom now. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. It's a whole new way of thinking about, so again, like you said just before, things we did years ago, in the case of Maelstrom, things we did weeks ago is not how we need to do things going forward.
But it's definitely underway.
Yeah, and it all does genuinely work, and it behaves physically correctly, and you see the visual result. Like all those ships in the CitizenCon Squadron gameplay video, those were all Maelstrom, and they break up differently to how things do in PE now.
How is weight calculated, and what are its effects, such as ship overloading? We were just talking about that.
Yeah, it's all related. There's two answers to this, both are the correct answer, but it depends what project you're working on. So obviously a squadron is Maelstrom, and that does a lot of the work for you. So depending on the material you apply to the ship, or per parts of the ship, like you could have left wing be one material, right wing be another. You set the thickness of it, it calculates the surface area of that part based on the physics, measures it, does some clever maths for the thickness value provided, and then that part is that weight. So you apply a titanium wing, it's lighter than a steel wing, and it all just goes into the physics engine and just works together. Star Citizen is different because we don't have Maelstrom, in that it's more designery numbered, and the process we've done for years is you take...
Yeah, that's a good question, boss. You have the CCU for the old version. Need to find out if the CCU adds the torps after. Yeah, I agree. You definitely need to find that out. Very good idea. Before you use it.
Plus 5% for Aegis because it's a combat manufacturing versus Origin, which is all high-tech and carbon fibre plasticky stuff. That gives you a mass for the entire ship, and you put that on the entire ship, and then the game engine goes, about 50% of the volume of this ship is this part, so I'm going to put 50% of that mass here, and that's why occasionally you see things behave oddly because the physics is misinterpreted. Maybe the asset has a slightly dodgy physics proxy, and it thinks it's got 5% of the mass when it should have 50% of the mass and it flies off into space, or the reverse. So again, that's the reason for having Maelstrom, is that those designer numbers go away to be compared with ones that are actually fully derived from the assets themselves. And it does impact flight. In both games. In Star Citizen, if you strip weapons and components off your ship, you will fly slightly faster. The ships are quite heavy, so you don't. Removing a 100-kilo gun off your 60-ton spaceship isn't going to move the needle that much, but it does. And cargo will impact it. It doesn't currently for any ship where the cargo grid is inside, because we're intentionally ignoring that at the moment. But for ships like the Hull Sea, Hull A, the Raft now, everyone's new favourite ship, if it's on the outside of the ship, it does account for that, so you'll feel like if you load your Raft up with gold, it's going to fly a lot slower and heavier than one that is empty.
Yeah, well, when Maelstrom fully comes online, all these calculations are more accurate and reliable. So I've always thought it'd be cool that you have the folks like Atmo and like XGR and stuff that do the races of like to do a cargo race. Like you have to load up 200 tons of cargo, whatever. However you want to do. You want to do it on the exterior, like whatever, but there has to be so much cargo on the ship, whatever. Just to kind of you have to get out your ship, swap out your components as necessary, to help with this.
Okay.
To reduce the weight.
Yeah, like maybe you clip a bit of your ship intentionally so that breaks. I was like, I don't need that to go, and you make up a little more speed and stuff like that. I'm always more interested in the Cannonball Run style.
Excuse me.
Make it more crazy, I suppose. two more questions. I want to ask one. This actually isn't on the list, so I'm going to add one now. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday, in the PTU, folks saw some handling changes.
Yes.
To capital ships.
Yeah.
I think at that point it's only rolled out for the Polaris, and whether it goes to the 90 jump.
Yeah.
So I don't know the answer to that yet. But these handling changes, the Polaris has sort of been everywhere and everyone's enemy for a little bit. It's like we see the posts where people are like, oh, this would have been great if I didn't have to encounter a Polaris right there, because they're just too damn fast. Yeah, they're too damn fast. They're too damn zippy. Not anymore. So talk to me about this change that we're making.
Yeah. So out of the box, the Polaris was too fast and too agile. We were a bit concerned about making it too slow. It was like the first proper military.
Oh, they're refactoring capital.
We saw
Okay.
Too far on the edges.
Interesting.
And hopefully now what is live at the time people are watching this is a much slower. It's still, the Polaris in law was a fast capital ship. It's supposed to be fast and agile, but that's relative
to other
capitals. So
not to a Gladys.
Yeah, you're not going to be dogfighting. So we did slow down pretty much in all aspects in terms of speed, boost, rotational rates, and accelerations, and done the same across the other capital ships. So technically, the other capital ship is the 890. The Reclaimers is sort of weird. It wasn't a capital ship, but it now has capital items. But just we've gone back and looked at them all and made sure they're all.
It's also affecting the NPC indexes.
NPC indexes.
So when people steal an Idris, and now they're going to notice that it handles different.
The same whenever an NPC Javelin turns up. They are all slower. They're not designed to be good in atmosphere.
No.
So hopefully all the sites of Polaris's nose down over the mining craters should start disappearing, because
Hopefully. Well, they're meant for deep space combat. They're not meant for combat on the ground.
out of atmosphere unless they have dedicated VTOLs. So we just don't want to see these big ships everywhere. They should be big events when you come across them, not 10 penny everywhere.
There's a line, if I remember, in the Squadron script from the pilot of I can't remember if it's the Javelin or the Idris, where they're like, a fighter is supposed to be reactive, and a capital ship, you're supposed to plan. You're supposed to plan every maneuver, 3 steps ahead and whatnot. And that's been in the Squadron script since like 2015 when it was worded. So I'm personally excited. I'm personally excited to see these things behave more like these giant fucking.
Live beat.
Hey, if you're translating it, when you're translating this, make it not a bad word. I'm excited to see them more lumbering and more imposing and more like a whale, like a whale in space as opposed to.
I think there's other levers we're going to start pulling as well on them in terms of like fuel and insurance timers, because they are big events. Like if you're bringing one out, sure you can use it as your daily driver. There will be downsides and consequences to that if you don't protect it.
And of course, this is not the first set of changes. This won't be the last set of changes.
No, it won't. There'll be more.
What starts it as a running a live environment in the middle of our development is that we get to try a thing and then let it go for a month and try a thing, let it go for a month. That's what this new release cadence this year. We've already done 4 patches this year. We're about to do our 5th one by the time folks watch this, which is insane. We're not even halfway through the year yet. There'll be a lot more opportunities to try something, tweak it, try something, tweak it, try something.
We have a lot of ships in the game. There's still a fair amount to come. So it's always a delicate balancing act between balancing for the game we have now
and the game
we have in the future. And sometimes we go a bit too close one way or the other. So you'll see things like, oh, this isn't that better than the others.
Yeah.
And then we have to do a realignment to spread out the range. Like we did a pass recently on the heavy fighters to sort of. There's all the F8 owners complaining about it, but to make space for there to be a slow, heavy, tanky one and a fast one relative for a heavy fighter, and gaps in there to slot other options in. And it's the same across all of them, and that range is going to grow and contract as more ships get added in the game.
I feel like Zooey Polaris was us being just as excited to get it out as players were, and let folks have fun with it. And then, you know, but I feel like this change was always there.
Yeah,
it was always on the
it was
road.
always coming.
So
Yeah.
it's just
a case of when.
Yeah. And as new flight characteristics, I know who starts with J. I keep wanting to say Jude. It's not Jude. Jerk. Yeah. Yes. You know, as Jerk comes online, so that'll change.
Jerk and control surfaces will change the landscape again.
So it's just I want to caution people against doom and gloom. When you see these changes come out 1 month, remember there's still work being done. Jerk and control services, and the new almost monthly cadence of releases this entire year means that we get opportunities to try something and try something and try something and try something. Yeah. So. Last question before I go, I'll let you go here. You got a lot of good information. This episode is obviously going to the members of the Chinese community, to those big events that are on that I've never been invited to. Tyler, I want to go.
Come find me.
We're gonna release this to the public sometime during Invictus and whatnot, because everybody deserves to have the information. We're giving that. These questions came from the Chinese community, where you give them their first shot at seeing them and stuff like that. It was a nice little thing.
So
I want to ask you about the ships.
Well, it's already publicly posted, so.
I want something that folks aren't expecting. Can you tell me, just name for me, one ship that's coming this year that folks might not know about?
Let's go for the RSI Meteor.
The RSI Meteor. What is that?
Sounds like a fighter.
Punches above its weight. Get another drink in.
You just drop some lunch on an elbow from the top rope.
RSI Meteor, folks. You heard it here.
I want to see what they can evoke from the name and manufacturer alone. See who's right. So yeah, thank you for watching, everybody. This has been Star Citizen Not So Live with John Crew. And of course, if you're watching it a little bit later during Invictus, I hope you found the show informative and delightful, as John Crew always says. You want to go spend some time with your puppet? You haven't visited your puppet.
I haven't visited. Shall I go get my puppet?
You want to go get it right now?
I'll go get it right now.
You've ignored him. You've had your child since November of last year, and you've done nothing with it. You don't visit. You certainly don't send alimony or anything. It's. They brought you back. Oh, maybe.
We'll go back to that.
Okay.
This is just as awkward as it is.
John, you are many things. You are not a puppeteer.
No. Gotta find where my mouth is inside it.
I know where his mouth is.
There we go.
There you go. Say something John Crew would never say.
I hate Drake ships.
Don't think that. I fist the man. All right, folks. Thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you next week. I don't know when this airs, but we'll see you for another show. There's always another show. Bye, everybody.
Okay, that was great. That was awesome, Chad.
Welcome to r/.
Oops! Stop! Ignore the start of an r/video chat. So what did y'all think? RSI Meteor, something like that. That is a interesting Yeah. Definitely interesting. RSI Meteor, Comet or something. I think it's Meteor, yeah. So we know that ship is coming. It sounds like a fighter, probably a small fighter again. I'm like, ugh. Mining ship. Could be. RSI, well, a starter. Well, we do have one from Drake, so we could always get another small one. That's a good question. Is it small RSI mining ship or like a fighter or something? Because that's all I can really think of. Salvage, probably not, but yeah. Guess what? To see to find out. Yeah. Just have to see what it is. Yeep. Anyways, it is 9:47 for me tonight. I have a finals for English that's due tomorrow night. I am going to have to get off here pretty soon. So I hate saying that. Before I leave, I'm going to transfer, raid a channel. I don't know who I'm going to raid. Who's up? Someone hopefully I know. Cyborn. No. Oh, here we go. Let's raid on good old Twitch, the 5-star. Hey, you have a good night too, big boss. Hope to see you around again too. 07, everyone. Have a great night.